On the Bigfoot Underground, we are going live with Mr. Robert Kryder of Kryder Exploration. And I'm going to tell you, the story that he has is one that you're definitely going to want to hear.
Something big is spooking residents. Multiple people have claimed to see a large furry animal trudging through the woods.
I literally could see him from all the way over here. I started hearing it. It was very large, and it was running so fast.
Your source for campers in Taos County. The Sheriff's Office is sharing safety tips on social media to protect yourself from
Bigfoot.
I saw something out of the corner of my eye off the side of the road in a culvert.
It's not like a bear, and it wasn't like a coyote. I've never seen anything like that.
No details. Big, like 10-foot foam, big figure. It freaked out, hit her in the leg.
I don't think it registered what it was.
What's the likelihood that there are big animals that have gone undetected by scientists and by trained observers?
Howdy, everyone. Hope y'all are doing well on this Wednesday evening. I will let you know that I love this show so much that I decided to miss the premiere of Masters of the Universe that's going on right now in Tallahassee. But it's okay. I'm going to see it tomorrow, and then I'm going to see it again Friday, and then I'm going to see it again next Tuesday. And the reasoning for that is that they have all these cool popcorn buckets and collectibles and stuff. So, and then also I'm a big Masters of the Universe nerd. So it's like Christmas around here for me. I also want to touch base on the influx of subscribers we have got. Last Friday, before I released the Les Walk and Talk, we were at 14,000. Today, we are sitting over 20,000 subscribers. So anybody new to the show, thank you so much for joining us. You're going to really enjoy it. It's a good chat here, good community we've built. And speaking of that community, I don't have the flyer made yet, but October 4th, I'm going to just double check real quick. October 4th through, what are the dates? No, it's not October 4th. It's October 1st through 4th is going to be the members only expedition in the Red River Gorge of Kentucky. Now, that expedition is free for members. You will have to pay your camping fees. So we've secured a 300-acre piece of property in the Red River Gorge. It's absolutely gorgeous. We're going to have some special guests. I can't announce them yet. But there's things on that property that you won't see anywhere else in the Red River Gorge. Perfect time of year. So if you are a member, make sure you plan on coming out. Y'all will have to send an email to reserve your spot and pay for your camping and stuff like that. But super excited to do that. And in that effort, people, we're going to set the world record for the largest Bigfoot expedition ever had. We're going to have Guinness World Book of Records out there. We've already touched base. We're going to get it done. So any of y'all that are members of the show here, please sign up and make sure you get yourself to Kentucky on those dates, October 1st through 4th. Anyways, let's go ahead and bring on our guest, Mr. Robert Kryder. Robert, how you doing, buddy?
How you doing, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. I had to tell you, when we were at that conference, where was it? Minnesota? Michigan? Which one was it?
Yeah. Minnesota, I think. Or
yes. I don't know.
No.
Michigan,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah, anyways, I didn't know you, and I'd heard about you, but we spent a lot of time bullshitting on the side of the building there, smoking cigarettes until the late hours of the night. And you're one of the most interesting people in this whole Bigfoot world. Very intelligent. You know, you can carry a conversation, in my opinion, with the best of them. And so I wanted to get you to here tonight because I've heard a few of your stories and I know you've got more. So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody, where you're from, who you are, kind of what got you into all of this.
Well, I want to start with thank you, Stacy, for that introduction. And I feel the same way about you. You're one of not just most complicated, but down to earth people that I've had a chance to speak to. So that makes it really nice. So when you get good conversation, it probably comes because the other side of that. So, well, my name's Robert Kryder, and I'm head of Kryder Exploration. And we've done Bigfoot research since 2010 heavily. We actually released in 2010, we released video we had since 1995. And we did that because I was kind of tired of seeing what was online, basically. And as the Bigfoot thing, we actually do real high-end exploration work. We do it for ourselves, but as well, private individuals and others. And we've worked as advocate with U.S. Forest Service, forcing them to make treasure trove permits and whatnot. But throughout that stuff, we gained access to super, super rugged backcountry, a lot of land, hundreds or even millions of or hundreds of thousands or even millions of acres that nobody gets to be on, generational land grant stuff, and being in those areas where they ranch with helicopter, you get to see a lot, and so over those years, we gained a great understanding of Bigfoot and what they are and how they are. And it was just a factual thing within our operation, basically. And in like 2010, 2011, I went ahead and I'd come off the back of a real bad big treasure deal, and I was kind of jerked off about it anyway. So we just applied everything we had to the Bigfoot stuff and see what we could get done. And of course, that ended up at some point going through the top tiers into our subject matter I think we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, man. And I'm excited to get into it, dude. I also, because I know you do a bunch of treasure hunting, right?
Yeah.
You told me something and I can't remember the name. It was like the Golden Frog or something, but you told, am I correct? Is that the name, right name?
Yeah. That's our name for it. Yeah. Cave of the Golden Frog. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. And that story you told me there, you were telling me about the shafts that you were having to climb through and stuff. But anyways, so let's get into Bigfoot, right? So what got you into all this? Like, why did you decide? Was it just because of the stuff that you saw, or like, did you have an encounter, something like that?
I've had personal encounters starting when I was like 14, didn't know what it was at the time, learned what it was since, just with a big scream event, BMXing down a mountain, and we used to just jump through these big deep arroyos or ditches and, all tree covered and whatnot. And I did that, and in the air, something screamed at me with such volume. It's just, you break the laws of physics because you're going one direction, you're 8 feet in the air, and all of a sudden you turn around, you're going the other direction. And I'm sure that's what it was after hearing them scream later, but mainly it was just, it's the nonsensical nature or the hype or the hyperbole or whatever it is, the ego and whatnot that just flows with this subject matter for some reason. Even early on, people just came out of the woodwork kind of with this almost already formed structure of behaviors around it. And what we were seeing is very small percentage of it was coherent or cohesive with what we experienced in the field very often, some places frequently for years. Having my whole crew we're a couple year periods, see the same large individual, things like that, and then I stayed on site in one location for 8 months solid, in a tent, never left the site, and had to deal with an individual every single night. And usually it was all alone. The teams would all leave or the crew would leave and I would just stay there. But just doing all that work and gaining this understanding, and then watching all the, I'm not going to say misconceptions as much as everything from steering the subject matter or the thought process or the perception of it based on the people themselves. They put themselves in it and then drive the subject through themselves outward. And I saw it going avenues that were almost scary because where they were going to lead was either going to be extremely misleading. It was going to challenge the wrong people or the wrong things when it doesn't need to. It was going to create division. And I didn't see a way to the answers through what was happening. So I think that was the motivation, was just like, all right, screw this. we have the method and the means and the experience. So why don't we just do it and see what we get?
Now, how are you getting funding these expeditions? You said you stay 8 months in a tent. So is this like personal, or are you getting like grants?
Well, I mean, throughout my life, I've done this my entire life, my adult life, since I was 18 or 19, I've done expeditions. So they've always been self-funded unless we have a specific project or hired by someone to do specific work, whatever it is. So we've done everything from, geoscan the largest grave site in the nation for the, police department, to locate pipeline for oil companies, to find treasure and decode signs and symbols, heavy excavation, death trap removal, all that kind of stuff. So it just depends on what you're doing to who's flipping the bill. When it comes to Bigfoot, I never sought any funding for that. The only time that we were basically covered was we've been comped for expenses when it comes to presenting to academics for our attendance and our presentations to academics and students and faculty, basically at university level. That's the only time we took any money for it.
Now, how do you, okay, because like seriously, I'm kind of guy that I feel like talking to academics, it wouldn't be intimidating, but I think I would have a problem coming across to them because I'm not like them, if that makes sense. Like I'm not all buttoned up and I'm going to cuss a few times when I talk. It's just how it goes. How do you cross that bridge when you're talking to academics? Or are you just you?
Yeah,
or are you to go into a different mode and do that?
No, I mean, I'm me. And then when you drop ego when you have experience. So when you have experience, you don't require ego. So you don't have anything threatened by standing with them because you've been out there and you've seen, you've done and whatnot. And I don't feel any less intellectual or of a lower level because of an occupation. So I discuss the world from the way I know that world. And then I relate the best I can with the best factual information, the less supposition. So I have a very strategic and scientific and artistic, whatever, engineer, blah, 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 all this mixed into this one in my head. And so it's just kind of like you just communicate to them like as if you were going to another country and you're going to communicate to somebody. They don't want to hear hyperbole. So it doesn't matter what kind of person you are, but, leave the supposition at home because you're talking to a scientist. So kind of thing.
Right.
And introducing them to what they know is, or they would believe, or they would feel is relevant, and just leaving all the rest behind. So I guess it's more of a method than it would be, so that I don't get intimidated, and I understand that we're all human. Everybody does the same thing. So, and when no one's looking, it's all pretty much equal. And I approach it from that angle. And sure, you run into arrogance and everything else.
Right.
In this particular situation, we will flow into a situation that will not just kind of touch base with what we're talking about right now, but it's just the absolute Mad Max scenario for this. So, talking to an academic about whatever versus what we'll discuss later would be facing an entire room full of top tier, some retired, whatever, scientists from like the national laboratories, big labs on biology and all this. And we had to do that as a result of what we're about to get into. And this is a peer group. This group cuts people down, and they were actually going to be used as part of a court case against us. So, we can get into that though. Let's go ahead and move forward.
Yeah. I do want to talk about that eventually. But like when you're going out, I know you said you spent 8 months alone in a tent. What are you always alone, or are you taking people with you? And like, what makes your team? Are you looking for certain people with, geologists or anything like that? Because you do more stuff than just Bigfoot.
But yeah, we have founded an exploration, research, and recovery team that, like I said, does heavy and high end excavation and recovery of historical items or geologic specimens or whatever, and or we guide or we consult, have a lot of equipment. So things like staying by myself, whatever. It goes from that up to, having I have a 52-foot mobile laboratory, tows behind, a semi, up to that big base camps. So it just depends on the operation and what we're doing. And when we talk just about Bigfoot, I've spent a lot more solitary time than I have with any groups of individuals, like Gorillas in the Mist kind of sort of thing. And only because if you're around family that you trust and they already know your whole jib, you can, middle of the day or whatever, I feel pretty confident and safe to go in around the group and, you know what I mean, be within earshot, twig snap earshot of them for hours at a time or whatever. So that kind of stuff can only be done alone. Anytime I've ever been around anybody, those situations never really happen. So, it ranges.
Now, after all your years in this field, what are you leaning towards these creatures being?
Human.
You think they're human?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you elaborate?
Even if they're what people would call human hybrid, it doesn't matter. Every human you're ever going to go find's a hybrid. Everything that ever walked upright, every primate that ever walked upright, and I don't mean could stand up and lean forward and waddle. I mean could walk. Its primary mode of locomotion was upright for long distance travel. Every single one of those is considered human. Period. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's Australopithecus, it just doesn't matter. Of course, we all know Denisovan and everybody else, but it doesn't matter how far back you go. Once they go biped, they're considered human. And there's never been any form of primate other than human that's been bipedal, because that's the defining factor. I can actually, I could bring those things up and quote them, but this, that determination, and this is relevant to what we're going to talk to, because this is where people have literally been misled for decades, not just days or weeks or months, decades. And I'm going to show you I don't have to do anything other than just go, here's a couple simple truths. You can go look and you'll see it for yourself. And the deception is self-evident. The characters in play are self-evident. Wouldn't even have to say a name, really, right? You probably will. But needless to say, the current curriculum on anthropology itself being taught in school does not regard these as apes in any mention, but they do mention them in the curriculum. And they mention it as basically an unclassified animal that's likely to exist. And they acknowledge that fully, but they don't acknowledge anything about that being an ape. Matter of fact, it directly states that it isn't a large ape. It's probably a large human. So they're declared that way, and that it probably wants to be left alone is even mentioned in the literature, which is odd. But it reminds you that any biped is considered a human by scientific classification. So as we talk about what we're going to, that's probably the most important note I want people to take from it. And just constantly throw that right there, leave it on your mental screen, and remember that through the conversation, because every scientist knows what a human is, every single one of them. So for any scientist to ever say that it's not a human and that it's an ape of any kind is a point of deception, because unless they believe it's not bipedal, period. But if they believe it's upright walking, its primary mode of locomotion is upright walking, and then they say ape, that's out. And every scientist that ever heard that cares knows this. But all the laymen don't. None of the people do. When they think human, they think Cro-Magnon or Homo sapiens sapien. You can have a Homo sapiens something else, and it's still human, and it's not us. You have to understand that we're a Homo sapien sapien because there's other sapien species. When Bigfoot was studied and DNA was done, regardless of how people feel about the study itself, the results still speak for what they speak for, the actual ones, not the ones you can go find people have published and copied to websites. And when they said Homo sapien cognatus or whatever, it's because it's the same thing as us. Now, to say, well, that they're so big, and this, and we have lots of references to giants worldwide. We can go all kinds of alleyways. We can go down the Nephilim alleyway. We can go down. Of course, the Nephilim were created by a species that came here that is basically enslaved mankind, and their offspring were the Nephilim, and they ruled over mankind as heroes, and they brought law, and they brought all the first bureaucracies on the planet, heavy regulation. Nature was to be conquered, and I don't think that's cohesive with what Bigfoot are. Like you asked, what do I think they are? Well, I don't think they're that, because that's actually the antithesis to everything that they are. They're the most natural, in tune with nature human that's probably ever existed, be it hybrid or not, successful in a modern world when everything else has gone away, and because of their ability. And that's to be respected for what that is. We don't think we have to turn them into some thing to do that, even when there's biblical reference and all types of references through every culture pretty well known about these particular creatures, and not in reference to them as being one of the early giants, which there were several different types of giants described. Denisovan would have been considered a giant. If you look at the skull of Denisovan, it was an upright human. It bred with man, but the molars and things are twice the size of ours. And they know they were big, but they never really tell you, oh, but how big were they? The molar, they had to be 8 to 10 foot tall.
Right.
To have a molar and a jaw and a skull that size. See, everything about the top part is its morphology's been balanced. There's no big thing here, big thing there. So if they've got a big tooth and we have a skull fragment and we know the head's that big, we can't assume that head is going to be on my shoulders. As a matter of fact, it looked like the skull behind me back there. It'd be this big sitting on my shoulders.
Yeah.
So we just have to use common logic and say those would have been giants. And now we know that as farther back than what we see in the Denisovan trace, we have things like structures that were built by somebody, and that's all accepted stuff. And if you're of the mind to be building structures, then you're already there. You're way up there. So if we just went a Denisovan avenue and said, what was something without their equal today that was like Denisovan, but hair covered, a different type of human, well, then the intelligence and the vocabulary, and they're already building things for tens or hundreds of thousands of years before this, even jewelry, and with complex, they know that Homo heidelbergensis had a more complex vocal structure and hearing structure than we do. And they were large. They were larger than we are. So you just kind of go down that avenue and say it's not far to say that here we just have another human, or it's a couple mixed, just like we're a mix. And they have modern human in their mix, and we find that in the DNA, and then we find unknown, or S, because most of if we look at the fossil record, it's supposed to represent one species would represent about 1 in 1,500 that existed, because fossilization is actually that rare. So in modern paleontology, they expect literally over 1,000 to have existed for each one you found. So how many advanced even human types or hominins existed that we don't have any trace of yet? Like they just found people in North Africa in the Sahara. They just found like 7 bodies. That's it. They share no genetic similarity besides being human, other than to any known people today that exist today. They're from people that no longer exist at all, and they only found 7 of them. And if it hadn't been in the Sahara, where particularly they found them, they'd have never found them. So again, there's all these examples of just missing humans. And so that's why I believe that. And after being around them enough, they're like being around just a tribe, like a tribe of natives. I mean, that's what they do and how they act, So.
Now, do you lean one way or the other about them being a certain type of human? Like maybe you think they're Neanderthal or Denisovan or something like that? Or do you think it's something we don't know? Because I've often wondered if it's not something we don't already have in the gen bank. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I don't know if there's been active work to compare it to Denisovan directly or anything like that. So I wouldn't even be able to form any conjecture right now. It'd just be up in the air. Just another type of human that existed. And, I'm not aware of any direct work that was done to clarify that. So. Right.
So I guess when you started this, because let me back up. You said something that was just spot on there, because when you talk to people, like if you talk to Cliff or when you would talk to Meldrum, they were real strong on us being primates as well, right? They're like, oh, well, you're primates, but it's to almost, it makes you feel as if like, yeah, I'm in the same thing as an ape. But what you're saying is that that's a deception, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, because the classification, if you and I said it, would be one thing. We could get away with it like party talk. A scientist can't do that. So what's he going to do? Go against his a formal understanding and to relate something that's not scientifically accurate to you, regardless of who you are. So to say that there's a bipedal ape would be stranger than if a Bigfoot was dropped off by a UFO on the front porch of the White House.
Right.
Because they don't believe that. That's not what scientific classification is. There's not a gray area in classification. An arachnid's an arachnid. And it's just the way it is. And if it has the traits that make it that, that's what it is. So if this thing is a large human-like primate that's bipedal, it's still considered a human because that's where the classification's made. That's described in the modern anthropological curriculum. So, and my fiance Tara just got her master's in archaeology under anthropology, and I've got the textbooks, sitting over here on the shelf that describe it plainly and what their understanding is. And it's been that way. It's not, this is 2019 that these particular curriculum books were assembled, but it hasn't been modified from the previous understanding.
Right.
A note to concentrate on is the perception that I think we can go back to a little bit. The perception of this scientifically whatnot changed in the year between 74 and 75. And if you go back before that, this was an unknown animal. And I don't know why people can't remember this, but around 74, 75, it became a mystery or myth and a fable or legend of an animal, with people saying that they saw this thing from a legend. And you have to understand the difference of that. To recognize something but you're not sure what it is one thing, or to recognize that people are claiming to see something that is legend to exist is another thing. That's two totally different frames of mind and perception. And ironically, the very show as a child that came out that probably introduced me and got me more interested in it, particularly because I'd already heard stories even by the age of 5, was In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy as the narrator. But still, the ironic part is that was already being delivered right then at that time as a controlled perception that was not what society and the cultures that experience these things, it's not how anybody felt. But the rest of the world thought they did. And so they formed their perception vicariously, not as direct witness. They formed it vicariously through the production of what was being told that these people felt, and they didn't. It was a matter of fact. And just as it is on the res today, if you go up to your Navajo res today, which these people are my brothers, and there's some of these other names that are big scientist guys that aren't embedded on that res today. So, and because of that very reason, it's the disrespect to what they see as everyday life and their reality, to do it as a whole. I hate to say this is a horrible term, but if you do that to a people as a whole and disregard everything that they see, sense, and believe on a daily basis within their spectrum of reality as myth because of your own prejudice, what does that make you, right?
Right.
Because, and I'm not even going to say the word. I think it's been repeated to us about 1 billion times in the last couple of years. So.
Well, so why do you think the deception is... hold on. Before I ask that question, I had a user ask this one. Do we know if anyone tries to investigate or get into any cavern systems looking for possible evidence of them going through? Do you think that they are staying out your way? Do you think they're using caves or staying in those for like refuge or shelter or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really believe as well that they're so aware of their surroundings and they're going to utilize things out of function and practical nature, just about anything that makes sense at the time. The unique thing about them as a whole, which I probably am quite jealous of, really the biggest trait, is that they don't require it. To use it because it's convenient, makes life easier, so to speak. So when we think of us, we think of shelter, and that's life or death. You know, you get us under 50 degrees for very long at the base of a tree, whatever, you end up dying, passing of exposure. So
I will. Shit.
But-
if it gets
right.
below 60, I'm about to
Right.
die, dude.
right. And for somebody from the Pacific Northwest, maybe not, but people do often, right? So this is the thing is we require so much, and they just don't require anything. They're perfectly suited for the environment, pretty well, regardless of where they end up. One is because they're highly mobile, and they can literally change zones if they need to in a lot of places. But back to the question, I believe that yes, that they do use cave networks at certain points, or even blowouts or cavities, overhangs, and the like. But maybe not on a permanent basis, or not, but when it's convenient or it requires it. And I think that when they need to, they can use areas that we would have no clue. There's a crack, a crevice, a cave, and they know the difference. They know if we know. So that's basically how aware they are of traffic and involvement in their areas and in their environment, that if a person was to access a spot, they would know if you've been there weeks after you've been there. They would
Right.
I mean, we see their sign a week or 2 weeks after they've been somewhere. So I absolutely know they can do the same thing with us.
Now, what do you think they do when somebody does come in? Like, I've often wondered how long they stay in an area, right? And I know here in Florida, it seems like they just have a big route, the spot that we go into, and it's 70,000 acres. So I'm guessing maybe there's 20 out there, and we're just trying spots that we know they've been to, that we've had activity, but it's just hard to nail down if they're going to be there at that time. So what do you think? How long they staying in an area, or if somebody comes into their area, are they packing up and getting out?
Well, I think that as well, it depends on a lot of variables, and it's not going to be the same. So it has to do with the group itself. How are they used to dealing with people? How good at they are dealing with people? How secure do they feel in their environment? Do they have retreats and whatnot without having to actually move or go away or whatever? How used are the people to their activity? How do the people react to them as well? I think if it becomes an adversarial situation, they'll bolt. But to us, when we see a 10-mile change or a 20-mile change, we think that's a big deal. But it's really not that big a deal. It's just going over here, and so we have a different perception of habitat there, overall. Now I can go right into what research has shown, at least the group that we studied in depth, for its area that they occupy and how long they occupy sections of that area. So in a high desert region where you have riparian zones between the mountains and grassland, and you'll have these big zones of tree coverage, super dense with waterways and things, and they occupy those as family units. And being in a situation like that, where they only have maybe a half mile wide, and then they have the length of this system, they'll occupy a mile or two of this, maybe less than that, even half mile to a mile of it, but for maybe a week at a time, or 5 days, or over whatever. But what they do is they'll affect the environment they're in to a certain degree, whether it be gathering, and they'll deplete the immediate area, or the game, their presence and what they do has run the game out of that immediate area. And then they'll shift positions, and generally they don't just shift position like right next door. They'll just move out, gone, and they're pop up 3, 4, 5 miles down the system, and then they'll occupy that for a period of days or even weeks. Sometimes depends if they have an infant or very, very young. They'll occupy a site that's more remote for longer periods of time. So and they'll shift within this structure. You can kind of imagine if it takes that long to deplete this much, and what the grow back is, and game move in. The game isn't too skittish of them. So They move out the games back in within a few days generally, but you have to give time for the impact of your presence. So they can come back to the same spot within a month or two. And so they may not range a huge amount of that system, maybe 10 miles, and work back and forth in little places within that whole 10-mile system, because you can, by the time you get down here, it's already recovered from what you did before. And that's kind of what we see. So.
Yeah. Okay. So why do you think the deception is there? Why do you think this whole thing changed? Because you're right. Before the 70s, people in the rural communities here, like where I live, it wasn't a myth. You know what I mean? It was, hey, the boogers or the monkey man, you don't want to go out after dark. Your granddaddy will go out, you know what I mean? But you stay your ass up here to the house because of that. And people it wasn't taboo. And then at some point it just changed.
Right. So
why do you think that is?
I mean, what kind of time you got for this show today? Right. That is such a loaded question. It's ridiculous, because the answer is so multifaceted that, there's so many reasons, and that's how you pass along something like this. But I'm going to say right now, the reason it's probably perpetuated to be is because there's potentially accountability, which equals liability. And when it comes all the way down to from the voices that kept this stuff quiet to begin with, and the motivations and things, to how different agencies and whatnot what became the way they deal with it, right down to the individual rangers and all that. Once that's all there, what do you do?
Right.
So you can't just say, and this is the conundrum at this point, and I will go into maybe why, but the conundrum at this point is, how would any authority or agency or academia or anybody else say, yeah, we knew?
Mm-hmm.
Right there. What's the implication? It's astounding, because they're either grossly incompetent and they're telling you, yeah, I'm an absolute idiot because I had all the resources and people and everything else, and we're there every day and we're supposed to know everything, and this is what we do. We didn't know. So if they say they didn't know, they've absolutely made themselves out to be completely useless. If they say we did know, then they made themselves out to be completely lying, and not just one or two, but a whole interagency understanding and way of dealing with the subject matter is already engineered as a lie. How are you going to do that? So they're in a conundrum. There's nowhere for them to go. We'd have to go give a collective amnesty to the whole thing, right down to the guys these days in the office. I'm lucky to have had an active, and still have an active, Forest Service manager, basically regional manager, on our team, and Ron Kastner, and he's an amazing man. He'll tell you directly. I've had him on camera live telling people from his desk in the USFS with other Rangers saying hi, that yes, they're real. I'm not speaking as the Forest Service. I'm speaking as me, and yeah, there you go. They're real. So there's not really a debate. This is the whole thing. The understanding, the debate, all this is just fictitious. Mm-hmm. So science doesn't really debate that they exist. The talking heads tell you they do. And the ones that we believe that represent it seem on the fence. The rest of them are like, oh, wow. And we faced both. And it's either a complete lack of information. Once you give them the information, they immediately backpedal completely. Like, oh, crap. This is, something. But so who's really to blame? So when we look at why, the reason why, not just this perpetuation of it, you have a lot. And one is economic, of course. That's always the first thing, is the money. They can say, oh, to break all the religions. Man, nobody, I'll be honest with you, they would do that for enough money. They don't. So economically speaking, let's just look at Parks and Recreation. You're looking at, I forget how many, it's in the tens of billions. I think it's either 30 or 80 billion that California brings in just on state parks admissions alone, period, just the admissions. This is not relative. Basically, admission's cheap, $5 to $15 to go stay, whatever. But you just bought you bought $200 worth of food for 2 days in the cooler. You have fuel, gas, travel, blah blah blah, all this other expense that dwarfs your admission, and they're making a tremendous amount on admission. The moment you say there is a big feral human out here that occasionally could carry off your kid, what do you think that's going to do for park attendance?
100%.
You're looking billions lost right there. Boom, gone. Just billions gone. Now, a lot of things ride on the back of those monies that are not directly within the park structure. They fund tons of side industries, everything from whoever works on those rangers' vehicles. So it has a massive impacts to absorb just through that one understanding. Now, if we look at, that's socioeconomic, and that's probably one of the biggest. And then as well, you have the religious impact, which there would be. And because there's a sense of control within different aspects of religious belief, and there always kind of has been, where there's a human standing there interpreting one way or another, those interpretations become complicated when you start setting things on the table. And you'll notice that everything that ever gets set on the table is what gets knocked off. That's what they're worried about. They're not worried about what's sitting on the floor that nobody can see. So the gray area is right there. And the why is the separate agendas. So I've covered a couple of those, but I don't think we could cover them all. I mean, we could go into all kinds of other rules, but you could even see where the military aspect or whatever, an understanding worldwide that these big things are running around and all this is great too. What great cover if you want to do some clandestine thing, wear a big monkey suit and go run around the edge of an Air Force base in Russia. I don't know, but I'm just saying that as many agendas as you can think of, somebody else has already thought of why they could use this to their advantage, and why it's not of their advantage to come out and say, hey man, this thing exists. And to my mind, my frame of mind, I think that the biggest reason is not just the presence of, but the showing or the dramatization or the exposition of what freedom is. So the true expression of freedom, if they're human, wouldn't they have human rights? Mm-hmm. Right. So, and then we think, wait, we have to define at that point, what are human rights? Right. And then, so because we can't cage them, you can't fence them, you can't do any of these things without destroying what and who they are. Which we can't do because that's the whole definition of human rights at its core. And then if they have the right to jump any fence, go live anywhere, grab any trout they want to, whatever they're going to do on their daily basis of living, then why don't we? And then what happens is, as by the example, we then see a different perspective of ourselves, because a free man in a cage, no matter how big the cage is still not a free man. So when we see that, wow, he exists completely outside the cage, just completely. And here we are, they're going to say, well, it has human rights, has the right to exist as it is. But that's all of our nature, to be able to exist as we choose. Mm-hmm. They don't have to do that. They could raid garbage cans, and they could do that like bears do or whatever, right? We're near in suburbia. They have places where without the garbage or the dump, the bears would starve. Right. So in that understanding of the nature of everything, I think that the expression of freedom is something that's very, very scary. It's hard to sell you something and say it's all shiny when you just watch something real shiny drive by. Yeah. And so.
Okay, I got another listener question. Have you noticed if Bigfoot pound their chests?
I don't know for sure. I would imagine.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a very, amongst humans and everything else, it's a very primate thing to do. So. Right. Yeah, I've never noticed that in the field, but then again, I've only actually saw the things a couple of times. I've been close a lot of times, heard them, but never
Like, you know, it's like sightings are such a fleeting glimpse.
Well, and we've recorded thuds, you know,
Yeah.
boom, 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 that I don't know what those are.
Right,
You know,
right.
I have no idea. I just know they're thuds, you know. Particular being chest, or one's pounding another one's back, or who knows what they are, but you know, so.
Right. So with this whole deception going on, are you familiar with Rick Doty, the UFO guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was hired by the government to go around and just like spread misinformation. Right.
And I think one of I'm not sure, was it quote him or another whistleblower, that was their job was to hand out bags of cash.
Right. And he's also responsible for a man's suicide as well, you know, which is crazy to think about. But do you feel that exists in the Bigfoot world as well?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, without question. So it's not even, I mean, you don't have to even think about it. Beyond absolute.
Yeah. I also think that, you know, there's a lot of things that are pushed with this whole Bigfoot deal by the gatekeepers, as you want to, you know, as some might say. And I think it's to kind of lead us off of what they actually are, you know. But I could be wrong on that. Who knows? I don't actually have a grasp for what they are. I would like to think there's some type of human, and, you know, the whole them being afforded human rights and stuff is a lot of the reason for the cover up. And it's just trying to find evidence of that cover up. It's tricky, right?
Well, yeah, I certainly wouldn't say there's an absence of evidence, because just by operation, methods of operation can dictate a trail of evidence. So,
right.
I mean, you have to just think, when all the Native Americans, I never heard, even though they didn't know what necessarily where monkeys were in the New World, but where they have monkeys, they don't call these things monkeys. They don't call them apes. They're always regarded as some form of man of the woods, man of the forest, the elder brother, blah, blah, blah. There's always a connotation that this is a guy, this is a dude, and that these are a people. And so we start thinking back, when was the first place you ever even heard the term that they were a big ape?
Right.
Yeah, where did it start? Because it never was that way.
Yeah.
So then was it? And what's interesting is when you see who you would feel is an advocate. So somebody that, wow, a hero, right? Stepped on the white horse's shining armor and is going to go trudge ahead for everyone. When they're the person that comes out of there, it's funny because you want to attach that hero who's going to save your village. And you kind of let things go a little bit. And I think we might have done that early with our heroes. I think that they came out of the gate, the heroes, with the ape. But everyone wanted to join to save the village of, is it real or not real? Because at that time it was being portrayed by then as a myth. But the believers don't want it to be a myth. So here's our knight in shining armor riding before us. Well, if he says it's an ape, that's good enough for now, because it exists, that we are vindicated in our belief that it exists through this. So then you go down that road and you're gone. And that's kind of, and it's the people you can't convince generally are the ones that actually have any form of experience around them. I think that those people know, and they're the knowers. They're not the ones that think. And everything I've never heard a single human being say it was like a big ape or a monkey running around. Everything is always the same thing. When they get a good look, when they get a raw experience of face-to-face recognition with each other or anything like that, it's the freakish part about it for them that sends it home. It was human. It was a person looking at me, covered in hair.
Yeah.
Beefy, big, whatever. Right.
I think with my sighting, it was more or less the damn size of the thing. was just terrifying and made me like, this is a monster.
Yeah.
I wish I could have it again through a different lens. Maybe I wasn't there within 10 yards of the damn thing to where it could grab me. Maybe I'd feel a little bit safer and I could observe through a lens where I'm not scared shitless. Right? Because that was the main thing with me. It's like, whatever this thing wants to do is about to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that feeling is not a good one.
No, that usually shows up around your bladder area there when it gets that bad. Just about,
yeah.
So.
Dude, I had nightmares about it. I still every now and then will dream and see that face, and it's like a sleep paralysis, because that's what it was like when I seen that damn thing. I'm just like,
yeah,
can't move. I couldn't get up and run, even if I wanted to.
Yeah, when I woke the big one up in the daytime by myself at that research area we studied the family unit, it was 10 years before we actually got that close to him, and I was only 57 feet, and that sounds like a lot. And to him, it was been 3.5 steps at full bore. So, second and a half, he plowed me. But it was the mass, because I didn't get to see his face, but I got to see most of his body. And it was the mass and the speed that the mass moved just was boom, gone, because your brain can't calculate. The mass because you can feel and hear the mass, but your brain can't calculate that moving at the speed that they did. And he reacted like surprised, awake, or whatever, was laying down completely prone. And I went up onto all fours underneath a Russian olive and broke all kinds of crap when he did. And never at that point, never rose up off all fours, and still broke stuff 6 foot tall. And, but that mass, that's what did it. And I'll tell you, fear, people can say anything they want, man, but when that moment happens like that, I'm pretty good. But my legs, I had hell keeping myself from running. Break into immediate run. My legs were shaking because they were literally trying to move. You can still hear my voice today. So, but I held ground and ended up going in there with him. Stayed like an hour and 45 minutes. And got us 40 feet for a long time. And but it was it's horrifying. Yeah, it's not easy, and it doesn't leave you. That affected my research, affected everything after that, because of the way it all went down. There was a younger one in there that I had been around in 12 years, like hundreds of times probably, and all types of, Whistler and Click with me, all kinds of times I'd go in there just back and forth, and had all kinds of evidence of him and a lot of understanding of where he went and what farms he hit and bird feeders he raided and all kinds of stuff. And but he was completely different when that big male was in there with us, Daddy or whoever. He was a whole different dude. Like, they acted different. They acted mean.
Oh, really?
Yeah, bad.
They felt brazen then, and they had backup with them.
Yeah, or it's maybe that's how I'm supposed to be. You could tell, you could feel it just as much as you could hear it, but you could feel it. Dad don't like people at all. Kid wasn't so bad. Been around him a bunch. People live in that valley, but Dad's hardly ever in there. And we've recorded him coming in and leaving and stuff like that, audio, and had a lot of movement understanding. And he's just rarely ever there with the group. He's huge. He's massive. He's really big. Yeah.
Well, why do you think he's never really there?
I think it's just too much impact. People doesn't need to be. I think from what we've seen in research, that the big males will go to super, super high, rugged, high altitude as they can get, or deep dark as they can get, and just hang out, not around the family. Family's a pain in the butt. So,
ain't that the truth?
Yeah, they'd rather just, for the males, they would rather just, apparently, I'm not going to speak for them, but do their own thing. That's just what it looks like from the research.
Well,
and
maybe
where they occupy is dangerous and stuff that's mind blowing. But
yeah. Well, maybe they are human after all, because that's a trait that a lot of males have nowadays, where they go to get the milk and they never return. Oh,
well, they've done that. Native Americans have done the same thing forever. There's always either a lodge or a building or a kiva or whatever, where all the men retreat to and go smoke tobacco or whatever they're going to do for whatever, and they call it ceremony. And really, it's just like the VFW or one of these other, places where most as men hang out, occasionally a woman comes in, whatever. But I mean, it's kind of like that. It's not, I'm not going to say men's club, but there's been that type of thing forever. And for an animal like that or a creature like that, they're just like the epitome of the masculine alpha male, like just big time. Like, screw this. I've had enough. I'm tired of hearing the kids scream. I'll be back in a week.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to the top of the mountain. See you guys. I'm out of here. And then go hang out with Jim on top of the mountain and carry big shit around and act all badass.
Yeah. Hell, it sounds like a good time to me, to be honest
Right?
with you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So what's your most terrifying encounter you've had while you've been out?
Well, I pretty well just described that one.
Oh, that was it? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. I've been hit by a rock, infrasounded, had them as close as 8 feet, with eye shine on cameras there, and laying on the ground flat, so you're less likely to get swiped or nailed or whatever. And it's point of submission. And been surrounded by family units. Yeah, hit by rocks, and nothing was so scary as that, the big bastard. So really.
Well, what's it like when you're in there? Like, how do you operate once you're amongst them? Like you say, you're surrounded by a family unit or unit. What do you start doing then to make sure that they don't attack you and that you stay safe? Nothing.
Well, strategic movement. So you always want to have a way out where you can't have anything come around behind you, because they'll mess with you and do that anyway. And it's intimidating. And they'll pitch little stuff behind you and make you think that something's coming up behind you and be on either side of you. And it's basically a game. At least in the family, this is only in my experience, because I was in there a lot with these little guys or whatever, and they definitely had young ones. And the big female didn't like people, but she wasn't aggressive. She would grunt to warn you if you got within a certain way, or there was more than one person. So if there was somebody else with me, she would grunt. But I would track, and the way I get to them is I would track them. They leave certain sign, and they'll leave it daily. And so where they occupy, they'll do certain sign breaks. Usually it's always on fresh saplings or fresh growth, usually hardwoods or something that's durable, and they'll snap them down and where they're going to be. And they'll might be within a 200 or 300 foot circle in there, but they'll access thick areas, and they'll mark these. And so I would go into their area and track these sites, and where I would find them, and they were that morning or right now or 15 minutes or whatever, then I just go down low and stay quiet and move in super, super quiet. Eventually you're going to get picked up. And if you make a noise, even a long distance, you'll hear one vocal or something. Woo, one. And then that's it. Everybody knows that you're in there. Everybody's already moving to where they feel safe. But you can sneak right up within them almost. And you just, you don't be a fool, be all looking everywhere and being all crazy, So that's the methodology, is just to feel comfortable with them, as if I'm going to visit a tribe this is their place. And right now this is their living room. And I'm going to go in and sit down 15, 20 feet inside where it starts to get thick, and just sit down. And I generally don't sit on my ass. I generally sit on my feet. And at that point, you're usually ducking and crawling, because they'll go in areas and just make these kind of tunnels through brush into zones. Mm-hmm. And that's where it usually all goes down, is you're never actually get into the zone. You're almost always in the tunnel structure, entry, whatever, and they'll pick up that you're in there. And sometimes the subjects will move, like the mom and whoever else will move, but then the younger males or whatever, it could be female, I guess, but act like boys. The cantankerous ones or whatever will mess with you. If you're not a threat, then you get whistles. You can get whistle back, go back and forth, and they'll do that for 20 minutes. As long as you don't move and all you do is whistle, they will move, and all they do is whistle. And then they'll move around you and things, though. But sometimes I'll get intimidated, and you can hear or feel one will be messing with you and going back and forth, and you can hear and feel coming around behind you and going to flank you in between you and whatever. And they're going to probably startle the shit out of you and try to scare you or do whatever they're going to do. And I don't let it go that far. So I'll back out. When hear them flanking or whatever. I try to keep presence where everybody's at within that realm, and just the way it goes. But that's my experience with them and how to handle them and whatnot. You stay kind and you don't try to take advantage of the situation.
Yeah.
When you do, they let you know. Mom will grunt, and it hits you like a damn, it hits you like
Right.
like I said, a rolled up piece of carpet. Like you back out. Yeah.
Now, does your fiance, does Tara go with you?
Yeah, she does. Everywhere that I don't have to be too scared for her, which is most places. There's been places we have gone where it got to be a little too much, and places where I thought we were absolutely completely safe, like no big deal. I don't even think one's in here, and then have it yelling at us and screaming at us, pissed off we went in there. And at those times, those kind of things, I don't necessarily take her to stuff like that now. And it's not because, you could say a woman's weak or anything like that. It's just the complication of I don't want to see her in danger if anything goes down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Period.
Well, do they act different when a female is there?
It depends on where you are. So they all are different. It's like when we say they, it's kind of like going through modern suburbia and going, well, how are they?
Right.
That neighbor's like this, but this one's a total jerk. So, and that guy over here is friendly to women, and this one's not. Dogs are, everything from humans from the lesser to the more complex animals all kind of act that way. So I find the gamut. I find kind of both ways. I think it might just depend on who you run into. I've not had a chance to have like Tara with me when we've done real adverse situations.
Mm-hmm.
Those have all been times to where she conveniently was not there, thankfully. And so I don't know, what the difference would have been. Those situations were situations where you would expect them to potentially become bad. And I wouldn't say they ever became bad, but they at some point or another became serious.
Right. Well, what would you tell somebody that wanted to go and experience this thing on their own? What kind of advice would you give?
If you're a newbie, I wouldn't advise it necessarily. Excuse me. But mainly have an open mind, pure of heart. If you have a foul intent, you're probably going to reap what you sow. That's with most things or people. If you go into a biker bar with a hatred for bikers, or it doesn't matter what it is, or if you go in there as a human being, you'll never have a problem just going to anybody as a human being. But if you go in there with a pretense and expectation, it's almost like a form of disrespect. So you have an open mind, and innocence is a wonderful thing, but not weakness. You want to represent yourself as something stand up tall. You don't represent yourself as prey. All animals sense that. So it's just the way it is. Even when you're being messed with, it's the same thing. You're certainly not going to be in conflict, but at the same time, you're going to show disapproval to adverse activity. You're not just going to bow, and that's kind of, you want to remain that way. That's important, but and don't let your guard down. So, oh, wow, what a cool little, whatever it is, this mushroom's badass, and I'm going to get me sick pictures of it and a selfie. Don't do that. Just don't. You're just inviting anything in the world. When that happens, that's when all predators move. And so if a subject happens to be, it doesn't matter if it's 1 in 20,000, if that subject or the one you happen to be around happens to have that type of nature, whether it be just had a bad day with people for the last week on the mountain, they ran off all these deer, he's pissed off. Those are the times where you're going to take a rock or whatever, because you're hyper focused into something. So it's stay innocent, stay honest, and with your head on a swivel all the time.
Now, where did you get hit? You said you took a rock. Where did you get hit? In the thigh.
Yeah. And because we were not prone, not laying down at that point, because a young individual is probably 8 feet if you stood him up, maybe a little bigger, because when he was every bit of 3 foot at the shoulder, easy when he was on all fours, and he was spider crawling low. He wasn't full flat, but he wasn't up either. He was out, and he just threw sidearm, man, with his arm. One arm was, still out, not down, but out a little bit, holding himself up, and still chucked a sidearm at us. And yeah, his eye was as big as a cow. But we could see him in full moon, and then the camera is IR, and so it gets his eye come out past a post, and then wham, I get nailed. And thankfully, Junebug, my little Navo brother, was there laying down. We were both laying down. I had set raised up when it started coming out. Junebug raised up, started to pull a knife. I'd reach up, tell him, put it back. See my fingers go up, push it back into its sheath. And I just told him, if it comes, you bolt, I'll take the hit. I don't know why the hell I said that. And then when he started to turn and raise all the way up or to a full sitting position. And it came in, the rock came in right then, yeah, and it crossed his belly, it came in so hot, man. Probably came in 50 miles an hour, and it was probably about a pound and a half rock. And I still have it. I had the rock cut in half, so we could each have half of it. But I had a big winter jacket on and in big winter gloves, and I didn't have them on because I was running the camera, and we had been laying down, so I had the gloves in my right pocket. So I had a big winter jacket, a big winter glove stuffed in that pocket, and that's where it hit, down right at my thigh when I was bent down. So it came in right underneath where I'm filming, boom, right through that hole, right under his belly as he was moving up, and hit me. And man, it Charlie horsed the living shit out of me, dude. It hit me hard. It sounded like, you can hear it on camera, it sounds like a baseball hitting a catcher's mitt at 80. That's what it sounds like. And it would have messed us up, dude. It had not hit like that. Had it hit an arm, you'd have busted somebody's arm, no problem. Hit us in the head, that would have been it, dude. You'd have been airlifting somebody out of there, or in the back of a truck.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, why do you believe they got with you like that? Why do you think they were throwing stuff? Were they mad? Is that what you're kind of leaning on?
We were bugging them. So we were up on the San Juan River on the res. Nobody's there during the daylight. We had special permission to be on this property. There's people there infrequently, fly fishermen, and they have some other stuff goes on this property, and they have activity occasionally, but there's no people in there on a permanent basis. And so they are apparently in there. We didn't really know. First got in there, found infant poop, scat material from an infant anyway, and then from larger individuals. So we knew there was family structure in there. And then early in the night, we heard, this is hilarious, but we heard an infant giggle, like some babies do, like the lyrics of that song, but there was a baby laughed. And then we heard a female chuckle come out of the trees. And J.C. Johnson was there, Jack Carey was there, George Harvey, Junebug Harvey, a bunch of others, Dave Oz, a bunch of other guys, can't mention all, but they were all there for, a lot of this. And then we had a real big individual come in west of us, and a few of the guys saw him leaning down behind a log. And then I went in from there, and nobody wanted to go back in, so I went in alone. And I got infrapounded, because you could hear a really big one, and then you could hear a smaller one. And I got the camera, and I say, well, I'm going to go over here a little toward the smaller one. And as soon as I said that and moved that direction, I got infrapounded by the big one. And that really messed my brain and my head, my body up pretty bad. But I didn't stop, but I backed out, and I kind of got my senses about me a little bit. Although I did vomit for 2 days after that. It was pretty bad. But I did try to go back in. So I went in with Junebug, or I went in with Jesus Payan, actually, who kind of goes this way and that way with the story. But we were standing there tapping a lighter on something, and something kept clicking back. And so I got its location really, really well. It was only about 30 feet away from us under a Russian olive in this ditch. We were standing on this little bridge. And so I got down in the ditch, in the water, in the little reeds that were there, and I belly crawled up underneath that tree to where it was. And it moved about 7-8 feet from me and stood there. And from my perspective, I couldn't see it. And but I was sitting where it was, and it was warm. And Jesus Payan moved around the trees and looked in at me, and he could see the silhouette of it right next to me, behind me, because he had skyline on it. And so it didn't go anywhere. And that kind of started where we were kind of infiltrating or pushing into where they were actually kicking back, inadvertently. And so then he left that spot, and then Junebug came back with me again. And then we went in and belly crawled in on a sand road, right where in the middle of where we could hear everything going on, and laid down. And I had actually done that by myself once. I had gone on the sand road on my belly and laid down, kind of just scooted on my belly across the sand. And I got within 15 or 18 feet of the biggest one I could hear, one that probably impropounded me. And he got up facing away from me. And in the nighttime, I could see his silhouette behind the leaves and foliage. And then, and he sauntered like this, you could see, and moved farther in. And then I went out and got Junebug, I guess, and I came back in, and then that's when we just kept bugging them, and we just kept doing it. And then eventually they got all the way around us, and we were laying down perpendicular to the road, facing the one that was closest to us, like 8 or 10, 12 feet off the little drop off through the roots and through the trees. And I got eye shine off him looking from there, and that's probably the same one that I crawled in next to. And then, but while we were doing that one down the road, 60 feet or whatever, was moving up, and we could hear him move up, and he kept like coming up and then going back, coming up, going back, and then chucked a rock. And then when we reviewed the video, we actually had little pebbles coming. We heard them landing, but they didn't know where they were coming from. And then when you can catch them on the video, they were coming from right behind our feet. And we had no clue they ever got behind us over here. So throwing little pebbles over our feet. So we were surrounded on 3 sides. And after we hit with the rock, I kind of got pissed off a little bit, but I shouldn't have done it. But I stand up and, like I said, it's all in videos. I stand up and tell him, man, you shouldn't have thrown this. It should hurt, and I can throw this back at you. It'll hurt you too. And we were backing up and backing. And you can, as the camera's panning doing this, you can see the eye shine of 2 or 3 individuals come out into the sand road. And we're moving quick and still giggling, but they're actually coming toward us, and we can see the dark shapes coming down the sand road. And we're backing up because we don't want to turn our backs. And we're still elated. We're all this energy and adrenaline, and well, it's badass. And they're still actually coming down the road, following us out. So I think it was a juvenile, a young one, pretty good size, but still that just took it upon itself to chuck a rock.
Right.
I don't think in any probably horrible intention, or they'd have just mobbed us. Yeah. But I think we just bugging him, and then the kid took advantage of it, and the big one didn't do a damn thing about it. Neither did like the other one. And if we'd have done anything back, it was pretty obvious. If we'd have done anything back to the one that did it, they would have just jumped and killed our ass. You know what I mean? Because they didn't care if their little brother threw a rock at a person. They didn't care. It didn't matter. That's my little brother. Don't mess with him.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, you said Jesus Payan. Is that the actor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I've wanted to talk to that dude for a while. Now, are you carrying any kind of protection with you when you're going in there? Do you have a sidearm or anything like that?
No, generally not. I have a spray that's probably, hell, it probably won't even spray anymore. It's so damn old. But we had custom bottled by a company called that makes Wildfire out of Phoenix, and so we had a blend, but that they don't normally shelf. And that's, it'll stop an elephant. Doesn't matter.
Shit.
It's if you spray an animal 2 or 3 times, it's cruelty to animals. You'll get charged for it. You can kill a person with it if you just keep hitting them.
Right.
But it's a do or die type of shit. Shoots 40-foot stream. I carry that. Never used it. Been in that position where it was already probably damn near justifiable if I was scared enough, I guess. But no. And I don't think I ever would.
Yeah, I don't carry a pistol with me anymore. Sometimes I'm like, man, why didn't you bring something? Because like seriously, I'm not scared of the Sasquatch like I am scared of running into a person. Yeah,
I know generally. Now there's one that recently I put some cams out on a project, and I feel bad for anybody, my guys that see this, my people. I haven't been out there to maintain them. They do have a huge amount of stuff on them. We had one of the cameras, something happened to it. Subject probably took it out. The other cameras still operating. I was supposed to get it back out there and work on them, but a bunch of changes happened. But that subject out there, I actually carry a piece, a long arm, because because it's been apparently shot by the landowner not very long ago before I was going back out there. And it had already thrown pebbles at us and done some other stuff. And he claimed whatever he hit jumped up and ran off on 2 legs. And it had a calf down. So it was big enough to have a calf down. So, you know, that under that situation, I do, but only in so much as just to not. It's only 22, so it's not like it's actually going to stop anything. And the point is just to show that I'm armed anyway. You know, like I have a defensive nature to me or whatever. I'll do what I have to do and be inconvenient, which I hate to do, but it is the way it is. And also out in these parts, you get shot at a lot by people who aren't even supposed to be the hell where they're at. So that's another thing. Yeah. And, you know, I have a video out. Me and Tara was even there with me and went out to a place and we had legal right to be there, but still got shot at 29 times on camera.
Good Lord, dude.
That's a lot of rounds to sit there flying by you. So,
you know, people don't think about like running into people, but I'll be miles out in the swamp and I'll fucking run into some dude, you know, and then like that whole instance is like, oh man, now I got to worry about this. Cause like the Sasquatch, it's, you know, you kind of know what you're in for, but with a person, to me, they're more of a wild card than the Sasquatch.
Yeah. Well, generally depends. If I go out alone, I don't worry about it because I'm going to see, hear, feel, smell him before he is me. And then people are easy, you know, so Bigfoots are tough. People are easy. You could sit 10 foot off the trail and stare. Just don't look at them. Stare right off somebody and they'll walk right they'll walk right by you like you're not even there. I showed Tara that with a U.S. Forest Service cutting crew. And I just went to a log, sat down. We were visible from the waist up. I said, just sit here, face each other. Just look at me. Don't look at anybody else and just watch what happens. And we were absolutely within view of the trail, within 15 feet, and had to turn and kind of curve around us. And none of the 4 guys in a row with their lead guy, 5 guy behind them, and they all walked right by us. And we weren't wearing anything camouflage or anything. We could have been wearing anything. They never would have. Just the brain just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
So people are easy. So I don't worry about us so much, you know, too much. Having somebody come upon me in places, that's concerning sometimes. But generally I try to keep the foot up, you know, keep up on top of it. So.
Yeah. It's usually when I'm not paying attention and I'm fucking running my mouth or I'm thinking about something else in my head. And then it's like, oh, wow, there's a guy standing over there.
Now, I've been in groups of people plenty of times and had that happen. We were in the Sandia Mountains and I didn't see him. I heard him and I heard a goat. And I thought, what the hell? I heard walking and I heard a goat. I thought, what the hell? So me and one guy busted in some brush. Other parts of our team were a little ways behind us. They kept going forward and he came out and he was a guy that had a dog, 4 goats, and a dog. And all the dog and the goats all had red packs on. And this guy was wearing a red pack and he was walking with a staff. And this is all kind of weird, by the way, because in this place, trust me, man, you wouldn't believe anybody would be. There's no reason to be. Everything's vertical and crazy. It's just nuts, this country. And it's thousands of foot escarpment. It's just jagged granite. And here's this guy, like a third of the way up in this stuff, man. Like it's a day and a half to even get there. And I heard him, I listened to my team talk to him. I heard him talking and he said, that's quite the crew you got out here. And then he says, where's those other guys at? So he had already seen us, been watching the whole 9, but just what type of figure you think of people that you would run into or may not, you can't imagine the people and where, like you said, and where in the hell you'll run into them. It's just like people are out there occasionally, which is sketch. And I don't know who this guy was or what he was capable of. If I had been alone, I don't know what he is, you know. Park me out and pack me off and make jerky or something, some freak.
Hey, you never know, bro, because that's automatically where my thing goes to. It's like, all right, this dude's gonna try to kill me. You know what I'm saying?
Watch enough horror shows to know better, right?
Shit, that's all I watch, bro. That's all I watch. So, okay, you have this issue, and we kind of hinted about it earlier, about this DNA study that you were doing. right?
Yeah. So I guess I just break right in there. We were doing some pretty heavy work. A lot of people getting a lot of respect and whatnot. And we got contacted by Oxford, by director of the study, Brian Sykes, reached out to us and asked us if we could go in the field and collect viable DNA as part of the Oxford Lausanne Collateral Hominid Project. And it's collateral hominid, not something like a human aside from us. That's how it was being approached. And that was, global news that went out in the AP. It was a big deal. And this is the first exposure to, now I've worked in backdoor all kinds of times because of the exploration work, right? So I already know how all that weird, funky stuff works. I've got backdoor agencies and all that crap. But this is, major academia. The AP was fully aware. The world's waiting, this and that. And they had come to us. So we actually went up, retrieved a specimen, submitted it, and it came back unknown. And they wanted us to go get another one because its morphology was completely unknown. There was nothing that it was. And so, and it had primate characteristics. And so we did that. It took 2 months, and they held the study to the whole world. So they told the world it was supposed to come out like January, and it went 2 months before they came back and they released anything or whatever. And the reason that it was 2 months behind is that they were waiting for us to get them a specimen, us in particular, not a bunch of people or anything like that. They did have other submissions quite a bit because they put out a call out, but they came to us directly. So I did this. It took 2 months to get a viable specimen, one that had a hydrated follicle on it, 15 minutes old. In this country, 15 minutes. And so it was considerable. And it came along with like 170 prints, 3 different subjects, very large prints, 22-inch feet print, 16-inch length hands, 8 inches across the palm, big subject, and 6 or 7 inch long gray hair. And he was missing, we had food remnants with missing teeth in the bite imprint, and obviously an older subject, and blah, blah, blah. So we had all the supporting stuff, and there was U.S. Forest Service retired there, an archaeologist there, and a bunch of other witnesses there that we did this with. So, and then the the DNA collection was done all on camera, all, full blown, or mask, even the whole 9 yards, gloves, the whole. And then it was all transferred into their kit inside of a hermetic chamber with a camera in the chamber, camera outside the chamber, all done tits, beyond ridicule. And then we submitted that in. And like I said, so they held the study for 2 months. And when they released study, they claimed that there was hairs found in the study from opossum, wolves, fox, and then a hybridized bear. They said that that's probably what the Yeti was, but no Yeti DNA, blah, blah, blah. Well, and they said they tested all the samples and that there was no unknowns. Okay. So we knew immediately, okay, here's the thing about it. We knew immediately that we had our first one. I have letters, I have everything from it, that our first one was unknown, that they requested us to go get another one, and that the sample that we submitted was not featured in the study, even though they waited 2 months for it. And with all the supporting evidence for it, we know what it came from. There's not even a question. And then when we finally got back in with them, we asked them what was going on. They said it was being curated at the Museum of Zoology in Lausanne, Switzerland for future study. Why would you hold a study for 2 months that when you get your golden boy sample, then you declare that everything was tested, nothing came back unknown, and that you're going to hold that golden boy sample for some future study? So we know it was probably studied. We know that they got back what they got back, and the supporting evidence was too hot. So they lied to the Associated Press, who lied for them to the people. Because the clincher is this. So in a study like that, you're not ever going to test a possum hair, because any second-year biology student can simply look it up and see that it's a possum hair by its morphology. You're not going to DNA test a possum hair. Why would you? It's possum. So the only ones that were ever supposed to be tested were unknowns. Mm-hmm. Period. So one, we had the back half of a hair shaft with no recoverable DNA. The second one was absolute, and it was supposedly never tested, even though they made the claim they tested all samples. You know, it was just ridiculous. So in the end, and like in my presentations, I say, well, you know, all hope is lost, whatever. Well, a new hope is on the horizon, and that was that the director of the university in Gallup, New Mexico, which is actually University of New Mexico, Gallup campus, wanted to, and at the request of the locals and students and some of the faculty and everything else, wanted to put a serious effort into taking a scientific look at Bigfoot, because they are around them and deal with them every single day. And not only that, they're not a part of their legend or myth. They're actually part of their history, and not from thousands of years ago. Oh, that too. But even as recent as the Navajo Long Walk, when they were marched out of here and everybody died, when they came back, they expected their elders and children to all be history, and they weren't. And they said, who took care of you up in the Chusca Mountains? They said the hairy men did, and they did. And so they are attributed, even during recent history, with saving their culture. That's who saved their stories, their language, and all that, because by the time anybody got back, that was gone, because they took all the viable people, you know, people and killed them. So we were brought in to be a field team for that. And that's where actually the rock throw and the infrasounding stuff where I had just described took place, was on the first time we got brought up there to be part of the team, get the introductions, do a little bit of research, went into the Chusca Mountains, investigated a Bigfoot sighting, and validated it. You know, we got it out of the car about a mile, and that's a long ways down the mountain, about a mile before the witness site. Didn't know where the witness site even was. We were told it was at the bottom of the mountain. And actually, we got on trail of the Bigfoot they witnessed on the mountain and followed the trail all the way down to where they were all gathered up at the witness site as validation and collected evidence all the way down. They said his footprint disappeared. He disappeared. He vanished. And this was all native stuff. And they said he vanished, and they tried to track him and they couldn't. And actually what he did was he plowed down a little pine tree, and he went about 50 feet and just sidestepped like 12 feet up behind a big tree. And he didn't go anywhere. So while the guy was looking for him, you could see everyone's tracks. While the guy was looking for him, he was standing there the whole time. But the guy swore he vanished because in their belief system, they can. So he didn't realize this thing just ghosted him, just solid ghosted him. And that's, you know, we collected tremendous amount of evidence from that event, including flesh, where he stepped on a stub when he went behind the tree and actually raked down part of his probably calf area or something like that had flesh and with the hair, and a lot. Now this lot of evidence, that was one portion. And it came with witness testimony and the whole nine, and on private land, you know, Chusca on the rest. So as well, they had a lot of other evidence from other people that live there on the res, because they're encountering them frequently. And there's a lot. I mean, they're right there. Some people feed them all the time, and it's no big deal. And you got a little family unit lives in the Desert Royal, comes up and gets the melons and whatever. Generationally, they've been doing this. So, but then as well, they have very, very mean individuals and subjects in there that some get dealt with. And J.C. Johnson worked with the paranormal department of the Navajo Police Department in helping in that scene. And we did too. We got brought up there by some of the elders there, and to help with a subject that was showing it. It was actually coming out when this young girl would be playing. He'd come out in full day, full visible of her, and freaking them all out. So we actually followed him back to where he stays and kind of like, don't push it. And but they've had cattle ripped in pieces, horses ripped in half, stuffed into culverts, and just some big problems. And so we are up there doing all this stuff because of the people's interest, the faculty, the college, the executive director's request. So this was the new study. So this study, we did a field research there and several other locations for a full year. And at the end of that thing was, all we did was gather evidence, and we hadn't formatted it with their faculty yet. But it was all the evidence and everything in whole. And then we, of course, had it written up to a degree so we could present it. This is the clincher. So after that year, the executive director said, we want to present this now to the faculty, to the students, to the public. We want to open this to the public. So they organized an event. And the event, they paid for that event with discretionary funds. This is important detail, which they could have spent on pizza or spray paint or anything they wanted to. It didn't matter. And so they decided to spend it on that. And this got turned around. It's pretty serious here in the end some. because this is a university. So they had this event scheduled, and we had decided a year earlier, or about 8 months earlier, whatever, who's going to deal with this evidence. And I actually recommended Jeff Meldrum and said, actually the executive director, I think, might have thrown the name out first, but I said, absolutely. But we cannot let it go to any laboratories that are outside the United States. In other words, don't send it to London. Or Switzerland or Brian Sykes or anybody, because we just experienced that whole fiasco. And so we instructed Mr. Meldrum to distribute this, and he volunteered to do it. He said, yeah, I'd love to be a part of this thing. So he volunteered to distribute it to 3 university laboratories here in the U.S. with direct instruction. Absolutely do not. No Brian Sykes. I don't want any notification of it, nothing. Matter of fact, we don't need to notify really of anything. Send the samples out, see what we get back. And he agreed to do that. So for that 8 months, we had tried to contact him with no reply and no response about where the results were. And so here it came time to do this presentation. So we had an large event set up. Matter of fact, which ended up being over twice any showing they had in the last 47 years of the university. That's how many people showed up to this thing, including the Navajo elders for the very first time to give their whole thing on it, even tell us words they speak and everything else. And but irregardless, so it came down at the end of this time, and we actually assembled for the event, and Mr. Meldrum was invited to come do his presentation as a paid position. So he showed up for this thing. So we were all at dinner, and I asked, or the executive director actually asked him, so what happened to all the evidence, all the DNA evidence? And he said, and he was eating and said, I don't know. And that was it. And we looked at each other in disbelief, like, this is a university level deal. We are at the university event. We are now eating with the executive director. You're the scientist we entrusted with the DNA, and we haven't got you on the phone in months, but now you showed up. So where is it at? And I got kind of bent out of shape, actually, because we're the ones that spent the last year, along with a couple others, but gathering this stuff. And so I asked him again, no, where'd it go? Where'd it go? I don't know nothing. What'd you do with it? And he said, well, I gave it to Brian Sykes. And not, I sent it here, here, and here, or any domestic anything, or all of it as a lump, the whole thing. Here you go, Brian Sykes, of the person he was instructed not to do that with. And you talk about mind-blowing. I don't even know if anybody could really sit back and try to envision what it's like to spend out of pocket for a year to go and do all this stuff, and you don't even realize how much work and effort and technology, and we're known for having all this crazy tech. Well, that means we have a hard time paying rent, and we go without a lot of things normal people have, so we can do this, period, at the time, because we felt it was pretty important. So there's a lot of sacrifice, as there has been through the years, but in particular. And to just watch all that year of work with teams and putting yourself out there, man, and getting favors and all this other stuff, to have it all just, the apathy was just insane. And but we still presented our evidence, and it blew minds. Now, not to take away from any more questions or anything, but this has to lead into the moment, which is all of a sudden the executive director, now this is not too long afterwards, the executive director was accused of defrauding the public for tax money. All right. So he was accused of taking taxpayer dollars, defrauding the government, faking a study into this mythological creature, and stealing monies. And so you're talking felony charges, fraud, him losing his job as executive director, all the people that were involved in this thing as accessories to this federal fraud. Right. And they accused him, and they got a group called the New Mexicans for Scientific Reasoning, who are all made out of top tier scientists from across the board, from biology to astronomy to astrophysics to nuclear physics, to all across the board, these guys. And they tear apart people's theories, technology, and all. That's what they do. They're a peer review group. And this was their group to deliver supporting evidence that what we were doing is nonsense. And so it really started going down the line. There was a 29-minute special made by special investigation, whatever, Larry Barker investigates channel, whatever, right? News, major network news done on this situation, which they completely blew everything the wrong direction and accusing the executive director of this fallacy. This is serious crap. Now, why are we doing any of this, right? And what they said was because if this was real, you would have DNA evidence or some submitted evidence or some study of physical material to back it up. But since you have nothing, you guys are going down. Why do we have nothing? We have nothing because a professor from another university entrusted as part of this study to submit this to samples to other universities, which would be a chain of custody, of course, full chain of custody that we could refer to, and it would be boom, gone, thrown out of court instantaneously because obviously it wasn't fictitious. We did a study. But their whole thing was there is none. Well, like there is none, like we didn't keep things, right?
Right.
So what I did as a result, I contacted the news, told them if my name's mentioned, they got me on video, but I said, you pull my name one time and I'm going to the woman who owns the studio and we're suing you all personally for slander and the whole 9 yards. And I threatened the shit out of them. So they removed any reference in text or vocal to my name. But we scheduled a meeting with their evidence group, with the group they were going to use to testify against us, the scientists. We scheduled a meeting at a community college with them to present evidence, to say, if you do this, you better be sure you're doing it. Because if we can present evidence the other direction, what are you honestly doing then? If we show anything that now has to be a question, what are you doing? Are you going up there with as a vindicated scientist saying, I claim this, or what? So they gave us that opportunity. I might turn on a light here, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, brother.
Hold on.
Y'all enjoying this conversation tonight? Because this is great. I'm loving this right here.
Camera's having to work overtime there. So anyway, we did that. So it took a 3.5 hour presentation I did for those guys. And by the end of it, man, they tear everybody down. And we've been told this even after by scientists in the room. They light people up in that place. It was crickets. And they didn't say a word. And the guy that runs the whole thing, Dave Thomas, gets up. And he's the guy that is on the news broadcast special as their expert saying it's bull right on TV. He gets up ahead of the thing. I got every respect for him in the world. And he says, man, I think we missed it. He said, whatever this is, it's something. It's not nothing. That's not nothing he's got laid on the table in front of us, because I had flesh, hair, food remnant, eating, bite marks, all the whole nines from teeth. And so you could get dentation, you could get all that crap. Had probably 15 casts laying out there from 4 1/4 inches up to 22 inches long. So plus we showed them with paperwork, documentation about the Oxford study, how it went through, the emails back and forth, sample submission numbers, the whole 9 yards, showed them the entire thing. I mean, 3.5 hours. And we turned. We didn't have a single person out there second guess it. And boom, right away, charges were dropped. Just like that. Just within days of that event, charges were dropped because they had nothing. And now I'm thinking, you know what? I want to go to court. Let's do this. You guys just messed up bad, because we're about to walk into a court with your best pros you could pull in the U.S. right here, all of them and a number of them, and we're going to put them all, and they're going to have to say, no, you know what? They may have something in a court. Boom, right there. We're going to do this in a court for the first time in history. We're going to establish this by evidence, by preponderance evidence. We're going to establish it exists, period. Something exists, period. And boy, man, that was it. So then what happened? This group that runs this state, like several other questionable states, decided to get smart and couldn't take the slap back. And the state senator proposed law to stop of mythological creatures, no matter what it is. Now, 200 years ago, a gorilla was mythological. Not much before that, a giraffe was mythological. These are mythological creatures. These were, I mean, you can't imagine somebody comes home and draws you a giraffe, right? And you're in Europe and you go, what? That doesn't exist. A horse with a 10-foot neck. What are you drawing here? Right. So, and but it's the same thing. But so it was ludicrous. I mean, that's the mindset that was behind all this stuff. And then you can ask yourself, well, wait a minute, hold on. Why couldn't Mr. Meldrum just step up at some time and say, hey, wait a second. No. I saw the evidence. I had the evidence. I sent the evidence off to London. Why didn't he do that for that study, or the college, or the university, or the executive director on his behalf as a former high up academic, right? Why in the world didn't? It was crickets, dude. Crickets. It was like a very convenient thing that the only true university level field study into the ecology and behavior of the species. This isn't trying to get DNA and go test it. What is that thing? No, man, we were doing ecology and behavior. Where they crap, how many of them crap together, what they do, where they eat, which farms they raise, which subjects are doing it for a year. This is, and then to have that, the biggest thing, this is the deal. And then from what I saw, other than that person in particular, mind-blowing what I saw. And having worked with agencies throughout other stuff enough times, paid and on the other end both, it tells a story that is self-evident. I could just go on, and it becomes more and more self-evident. And the scary part about all this is I'm not going to call it indoctrination or a cult, but what do you do when your advocate that brought it out of the shadows in the 70s and ever since, blah, 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 becomes potentially not just a gatekeeper, but an active, what do you call it?
Yeah. To me, like, okay, so
coffee cups empty.
Meldrum was always good with me, right? He was always gracious, and I knew him from early on. But then, like, I would send him all my stuff, and he would constantly tell me, "Oh no, somebody's messing with you, or those are faked, blah blah blah." Right?
Yeah.
Well, then he gets this backer who like owns the Chicago Cubs, right? This guy's backing him, and he gets to pick 6 spots to go around the country, and they're going to find evidence of Bigfoot. Well, after telling me all this stuff for years, he picks my spot and comes to it, right? And when he comes to it, he tells the landowner to not let me know. Fair enough. You don't want me messing around in your thing you got going on. That's fine.
Yeah.
No problem there. But then you're also there with like 10 guys who are armed to the teeth. Right. And so I often wondered, trying to push, was he more or less a mouthpiece for the federal government?
All right.
Well,
and not to do all the talking. So, excuse me, it comes down to a couple of things. And something you mentioned really, we kind of go back and forth here a little bit, but really bothered me. I mean, deep. And that is, you're not the only person. You were not dissuaded because I think you know better. Mm-hmm. It more turned you off him so much, but not, you weren't dissuaded from research or from your sites or from your spots or any of that. You knew, I believe you knew you were valid within your own belief structure. So, but I have seen other people that I respect a lot who are so serious and dedicated, right? Give up sites because of a footprint evaluation and him saying the same thing to them. When I know for a fact that we have tracked subjects that leave identical footprints, identical. Mm-hmm. And, as a kind of a proof of point, I have put out a picture that by people and the doctor, where one print was said, yeah, now that's one for sure. And that one's for surely not. And they don't know that the tracks were 30 feet apart from one another in sand. And in this spot, he stepped one way, and in that spot, he stepped another way. It's the same trackway. And I have a huge division and argument amongst people on which one's real, which one's a Bigfoot, which one's a human, including the doctor. Okay, right. So how can you do that? It's just that's how it put its foot down at that time. The important morphological structures that that people could be using to classify them, they don't, because he's not showing it to them. He's saying things like tapered toes. He's saying things like a narrow heel, things like an arch. All those things would say, no, it's a person, or a tucked pinky finger. I've got tons of them that are like that. And what's funny is I've even got them from infant size, where that toe's sideways being held on top or almost on top of the other toe, just like you'd say, oh, it's from years of wearing the shoes. And these are prints that are like 3 inches long.
Right.
That show that same trait. And then I've got prints 23 inches long. So, okay, that happened from wearing shoes. Who gave this 23-inch foot dude shoes? No, it's just the way they carry their pinky, because I don't know how much time you ever spent walking around out in the woods barefoot, but if you snag your pinky toe, you're screwed. So you walk with it cupped. It's just part of what you do. And people don't just do that enough. They don't realize. And the 4-foot plant, go walk around on gravel with a soft foot, and then step with your heel down. You know you're going to lame yourself, so you'll instantly start putting your pressure on your front of your foot. And they transfer those loads for these reasons, but you're not being taught that. There is a structure that you can use to validate their prints, and they're all the same. And it doesn't matter if they have tapered toes, if they have boxy toes, little toes versus a big foot, or big toes. We got them the toes look like fingers on some, and some they're stubby. But if you go look in the normal variation of humans, and you look at their feet, you will find absolutely every bit of that variation, from flat-footed to high arch to tapered toes to box toes. All those exist within just us, period. So those are not defining factors. What are defining factors are where the bones are and how the bones bend. That's a defining factor. Our foot cannot hinge in the middle whatsoever. It can actually cup a little bit. You can go posterior a little, but you can't go anterior, because the arch isn't actually this, where the length of our foot, that's not the arch of the bone structure. The arch is to the bones. And if I have something flat across, I can bend it. But something like this, I can't bend it anymore, like bending a pipe versus a piece of paper. Go bend a cardboard tube, like a paper towel tube, try to bend that. Then take a flat piece of cardboard that thick and try to bend it. It's because you have this arch curve structure within your bones to stop your foot from hinging. They don't have that. Their hinge is straight across right there. So, and then there's a ratio change that stays the same whether their foot is 4 1/4 inches long or whether it's 23 inches long. But see, none of these were ever taught by him, not one single thing. And then I had him do the same thing. Those are human. Well, human when we knew one way or another, but then at the same track way, no, those are not human. Those are for sure what we're looking at, because it showed the signs we're used to, the big, deep cupping of the mid-tarsal break right there. But what we see, things like, I can show you, there's pictures of young we have where the first metatarsal and big toe make up 50% of the foot. 50%, the whole length of the foot is. And this is just the big toe and the first metatarsal. And then the whole back half of the foot's this long. The big toe is almost as wide as the heel. Because when they're tiny, when they're little, they're kind of like that. And the boys versus girls, whatever, I guess. But we find those. Well, have anybody explain that as a human? There's no kid on earth with feet that damn goofy. You're not going to find. Sorry, this human does not vary out that far. We don't vary that far out. But it's because they're about to grow into this huge structure and need that. And so you can see the bigger parts on the smaller foot elongate apart from each other and become big. So there's really not a question, but your point, and the point of all this is it comes back to gatekeeping. Now, when you have someone who's invested thousands of hours, and I'll say his name because I have every respect for him in the world, and I think he kind of got pissed off at me because he doesn't understand. I made a comment one day, and we'll go over that if you don't mind. But it sure gave me a lot of flack, man, like a hellacious amount of flack. But I didn't mean anything by it. I never even mentioned Dr. Meldrum's name. But Randy Harrington is someone that I respect wholeheartedly because he puts in so much work and he's so authentic and he wants to be so true. Doesn't want to be misled. But at the same time, I watched him submit photos of evidence and whatever to the doctor, and the doctor shoot him down, and he quit, or he said he quit in a post, quit researching that area. And it was one they had been working for a long time because it was obviously human messing with them. And I'm looking at this track going, wait a second, man. We got the identical tracks from Michigan, Oregon, New Mexico, Colorado. They're identical. The whole family used them. tracks from the big ones to the little ones. And in that mix of tracks from big ones to little ones are identical prints to what he's sitting there saying that. And we all know none of these are some other feral family group out on the riverbed that's out there year round, every single year, all the weather, vomiting on the ground some days, or diarrhea or whatever. Your kids aren't out there puking their guts out and you're taking them out in the river at 5-degree nights and busting the ice for them, right? So that's not what's going on, right? This is real deal. And here he's shooting this down to the point that Randy stops researching an area. That shot me. And here it is. I hear the same thing from you. And I had not heard that before today from you.
Yeah, I didn't. See, here's the thing, man. Like, I'm not a dumbass. Right. And I think it was back to my comment earlier about when you're talking to certain academic types, they'll kind of position themselves almost as it like they're ahead of you intellectually. But like, brother, you may be good at Microsoft Word or you're typing your fucking emails and shit, but we get out there in the woods, it's a whole different game. You know what I mean? Like, this is where my knowledge shines. And for you to tell me that somebody's making stamps in the ground or it's somebody's feet, when like, dude, nobody knew I was fucking coming out here. I'm on a 5,000 acre plot that I know nobody's been to because it's not deer season. We're in the middle of the summertime right now. It's 100 degrees. And I'm finding these tracks way out in the middle of nowhere. Now you're telling me they're a stamp. So it got my wheels turning back then. And I just quit giving him shit. I just quit sending stuff because what's the point? And I didn't stop researching the area. I just stopped putting the stuff out.
But see, that still had that same effect. And that's what I knew about you. I knew you would believe in your own thing. You're not an idiot. You know what you've got. You know the validity of it because of the logic, right? But at the same time, you stop putting stuff out. Mm-hmm. And because if that flavor gets on your research from that name, you're automatically thrown. And then what happens to the reason we do this, which I think you're the same, is to get to truth and just expose truth. I just want to know. I'm tired of bullshit, right? So I'm tired of being fed and spoon-fed all this crap for years and years and years about everything in reality. That's all being reinterpreted and fed to you in one way or another to have this big I'm tired of all of it. I want to see it flopped on the table, hear the bang, see the splash, whatever the hell it is, and right there it is. Now let's look at it. But what did it do? It was effective in that simple response because we all know what happens if you go against the hero in the saga. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. You're just going to get jumped on by the mass anyway. Your work then becomes insignificant and irrelevant. So what do you do naturally? You go, you know what? I'm not going to stop because I'm doing this for the reason I do this. I'm going to put it all over here in this box, and hopefully there'll come a day when something switches. They'll see this differently, where I'm not the enemy just because of who their hero was, and I can show them. And that's what I faced. Like, I actually wrote a post after he passed, and I had seen a bunch of tributes right around then. There was 3 or 4 tributes to different people. And that's absolute. And I respect him for who he was. And I know people loved him. He had a family, the whole 9 yards. As a human being, fine. That's great. As a researcher, no. As a professional, no. Look what we've just been through. Just racked the biggest study in history, and a bunch of people down there went to jail for it, for no reason. When you experience those things firsthand, and then I watch as this guy's crawling off of his research spot, this lady over here disregards what she sees. It actually endangers people to some degree to do that. When you know better, you've been around everybody, you've seen all of it, you know better, you're still going to act like that, still going to say these things to the point that it's having real impacts. And you know what's screwed up is it's not impacting any of the people that go out there and sit in a chair. It's not impacting any people that tell stories. It's not impacting anybody like that. Doesn't do that whatsoever. They're just fine. It impacts the people who are doing it for the right reason, truth, right? Mm-hmm. That have the ability to go out there, really out there, and the wherewithal to do this, which is not an easy thing. That's who it impacts, because they're the ones who are doing it selflessly. And when they're trying to give a selfless gift to humanity and they get slapped in the face with it because someone else's idea or ideal, right? What do, man? You're not going to change who you are, but you're not going to stick it out there to get slapped again.
No.
So that's a trap. The ones being dispelled, not anybody else, just the bringers of truth, which to me is people like Randy and yourself and other people who are dedicated They're just doing this. They would do it if they were on a desert island. They'd still do it, right? If there was nobody. And now they're getting backed off, and it breaks their hearts. That pissed me off. So in amongst the days of tributes, which wasn't the same day or anything else, I wrote, while other people are writing tributes, I'm going to rejoice in the fact that an end of an era has occurred. And it wasn't just him. There's other people that in the last few years are gone, not just in Bigfoot, and all types of things, from advanced energy systems to whatever it might be, that there's an obvious truth, and we're obviously not being told it, right? There's an end of an era coming, and I'm rejoicing in the end of that era. I personally, because now, like I wrote, maybe the truth of this can come out. People can go do it without someone telling them, A, it's a big ape, or B, that Bigfoot print is not a Bigfoot print, or C, if it's over 18 inches, it's fake.
Yeah.
Who limits this? Whose mindset did that come off? You know where it comes from? Because Gigantopithecus would have not had a bigger than an 18-inch foot. And we're right back to 1974, 75, and all the curriculum and the scientific understanding and the entire 9 yards about everybody knew it wasn't an ape, except the people that have been trusting the talking heads.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah. I think when they put these boxes around it, it stops people, because like, even if you were to join the BFRO, and I'm not talking anything bad about the BFRO, but they have a damn book, a manual that you get, right? And they have this whole green man analogy and shit, and it's all in how to deal with being around Bigfoots and stuff. And it's even in that book, it's even got the clothes you should wear, right? Like it's ridiculous.
Right.
But
that's when you can start using the word cult.
Yes.
Yes. I like BFRO too. I got no problem. I actually work with, and one of my best buddies, man, Boyd Omer, is BFRO, and he's the most amazing guy in the world. I don't think he gives a rat's butt about that. Mm-hmm. He's into it for the right reasons. You know what I mean? So, but go ahead. Yeah.
But when you do that, you're making absolutes, and there's too many variables that we don't know about. You know what I'm saying? To go and claim anything absolutely. Like, oh, I know this. Well, you could say you've observed that. Sure. Right. But you can't make the fact, because there's different ones in Florida than there is in Alaska, and they may act completely different due to their terrain, habitat, temperature, all that shit.
Absolutely. One valley to the next, they might act completely different.
Yeah.
People used to ask me all the time, this is really important as a basis for all understanding of just about everything in the natural world. They'd ask me, are they mean or are they nice? I'd say, are parakeets mean? Some are. Some are nice. Some are nice, and some days they're mean. You name something that's not. And the higher the intelligence, the higher the propensity of being unpredictable, because you're thinking about stuff. And man, you can just piss yourself right off, and whatever else may piss you off, and you don't forget it. So, the reality, that's the funny part about it. So we want to go out of myth and into reality. Why do we keep making these things mythological? It's not the wolf man. It's not anything like that. It's not anything. When I say anything like that, it's nothing like that whatsoever. This is not Dracula. This is not Hollywood creation. So what you'll see is often, and especially in all the old shows, they don't say a Bigfoot. They say the Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And I love these guys on the show, man, and they run my equipment and everything else. But on Expedition Bigfoot, the first couple of seasons, that's how it sounded. Yeah. Because they tracked him. They use an algorithm to find out where he's at or where it's at. And that's, what do you mean, man? That's like going to California and saying, there's one guy in LA, like one guy, and we're going to figure out where he's going to be, because you've got a whole forest full of societies of these things, doing cultural things and interacting with one another and the environment and all this. It's not one thing, but so the mythological realm of monster, there's one, the creature from the Black Lagoon, right? Mm-hmm. The everything. And that's where this thing comes up. Well, maybe it was a lab deal because there's one, or it's a fluke. They're not a breeding population of the creatures of the Black Lagoon, right? It's not creatures of the black. It never is in Hollywood. And so that's how they've been portraying this the entire time, by this singular vernacular that they always throw down on it, and the myth that they always throw down on it. And the natives believe that they blah, blah, blah. No. They recorded blah, 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 not believe people. So we constantly, there's this spin, and most just aren't aware of it. They don't know. I'll tell you what they could do. They could look into what's called NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. And then you'll see how words tell your subconscious all kinds of information that your conscious is ignoring, like these little words I've been saying, that change the meaning completely to the way your internal belief system works. So it's called programming, and that's how you're programmed. You program yourself by reading it or listening to it.
Now, okay, so you work a lot closely with Navajo Nation, correct? How do you...
With members of the Navajo Nation, my family up there, yeah.
Right. So I know their belief system is more of a spiritual kind of thing with the Sasquatch, correct?
No, it's a matter of fact. He's right there, man. Yeah, absolutely. It's a matter of fact. He's another guy that occupies the same spots they occupy. It's a whole family groups. It's absolutely nothing but. And one of the biggest points I got respect for was I regard their offspring as children. And this is something that the doctor and a few others got a lot of grief for, man, on the backside. They probably didn't hear it, but I sure did. About calling them young. They're young.
Right.
And no, they're their children. They're their kids. That's their aunt. That's their uncle. And that's how they see them. It's not fanciful. It's not, there is a spirituality to them, but everything's wonderfully spiritual that way. They don't, and I don't know of any native culture that does separate spiritual part from any other living creature, or even the sentience in that sense. We do that. Europeans do that. They like to justify that animals are lesser than humans because they can't justify the treatment that they do with animals. And natives always had great respect in that sense. There's always a mourning to any time you had to take a life to feed your family or whatever. It's respect because they see that as an equal. And that's how it always works. So I think, yes, they are seen in a spiritual way, but so is everything else that's real to them. They don't impose magic and things like that. They offer reverence to how amazing it is. They never claim use magic, or they didn't claim anything like that. There's a reverence to the things we don't understand. But there's no, oh, he's a magician of the forest, or it's none of that kind of stuff, you know.
Now, have you ever experienced anything weird, like the lights? I know I can't speak for a lot of people. I can only speak for myself. As I've been through my years, I'm open to whatever, right? Because I've experienced these lights. Equipments went dead at the most inopportune times. Help my buddy Les Stroud, very credible, very down-to-earth guy. He says he's had telepathic communications from these things. Now, have you experienced anything like that, or where do you land on that kind of stuff?
No, absolutely. But I think that the word paranormal was actually coined by information agencies anyway to make us believe that these things weren't normal.
Yeah.
So they're normal. It's normal. Animals do it all the time. I know people that do it, especially people that are vets, that aren't just vets. They didn't just sit on a base somewhere, that are pulled off the hardcore and the scary shit. And they're the same way. They can feel, and I can too, from being out there and just, if I go out in the dark, you can be a person and there's things in the dark, or you could be the thing in the dark. And so when I go out, I'm the thing in the dark.
Right.
And being the thing in the dark, you actually hear, and you're a piece of the environment. You can hear and feel things you can't normally hear and feel. You sit on a rock and just shut the hell up. No lights, no nothing. Just sit there, crouch up into a little ball, and just think to yourself, I'm a rock, and witness the earth. And you'd believe somebody can get out of a car a mile from you. You will get a feeling someone's there.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like you said it earlier when you said you and Tara just sit there and look at each other and don't look at them. I can feel you looking at me. And I think people ignore that shit because, like, I can also feel like if I'm washing dishes, my wife sometimes try to come up and startle me or whatever. I felt you when you turned the corner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And is that paranormal? What is that? I think humans have a lot of these abilities that we just don't pay attention to anymore because, just like you said, we've pushed things into like taboo.
Yeah. We made it strange.
Right.
So, and by doing that's how you control it. But I want to tell you how natural it really is. So you can take an owner of a house plant, take them 1,000 miles or farther. Doesn't really matter how far. And you can affect the person and read that effect in the house plant, in their house plant.
Really?
Yeah, from 1,000 miles away or 100. It wouldn't make a difference. It's instantaneous. There's not even dilation at the speed of light. It's not there. It's instant. You can take a cup of cultured bacteria like yogurt and split it because so they're the same culture and put it on one side you put it in New York and the other part in LA. And when you give food nutrient to the culture in LA, the one in New York will react. Okay, so we're talking bacteria.
It's like a quantum entanglement kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything is that way. We all feel each other's intent, all of us. Now, you're taught to ignore that intent continually, to question it with logic and intellect. That's called ego. So if you were going to douse water or you were going to do any of these things or read someone's mind, first you have to remove your mind. And that's what the phrase means. In order to find something, you first stop looking. Because if you're looking for something, you're not even open to finding anything because there's already a something you're looking for. And you wouldn't be looking if it was known. The unknown is something you're not looking for. You understand? Right. And that's how it works. So we block all of that crap and we throw our ego and our thought process and our imagination on it. And this is what leads people down really scary roads sometimes. Because they can be intuitive people, but they answer the questions with their own intellect, their own mind through their own filter, even forming their own visions or pictures. That's why there's a percentage accurate and a percentage inaccurate. Why is that true? They only psychic for this 30 seconds and not that 30 seconds? No, because this time is when they put their ego, their idea, their imagination, put something into the information and they got it wrong. But if they were able to have released complete ego and anything like that whatsoever and take themselves out of the equation and be a pure witness, they would never be wrong. And that's where these things are. You're not going to screw them because they already got you, man. They got you a week ago now, and they got you a week from now. To understand that is like outside of our ability. It's like imagine nothing. Well, you might imagine blackness. Well, that's still something. So we have a very limited concept of this quantum nature to anything. You know, folding space. There's no such thing as folding space. There's no such thing as a wormhole that bridges space and pulls it together. It doesn't exist. That's a mathematical representation in a 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional space, but you can't do that. If you go over a certain speed, you just don't exist between here and there. But how do you imagine where are you then? Well, you're there, but you're only there relative to what you're passing next to. So you may not be there to something 10 feet from you, but you are there to something 10 miles from you. So that's relativity, your relative nature to time space, right? So they can draw this all the hell the way they want to, but there's a simplistic nature self-expressed through biology that tells us these things are normal. Now, you can go into the other end. Let's touch base on these things, morphing, cloaking, whatever, all this stuff. Walking in two worlds, all of it. I'm going to tell you what walking in two worlds means. It doesn't mean you step through a portal. It means you're astro traveling. There's only two worlds. There's this world and the spirit world. And that's all there is. And you're either walking in this world or you're walking in the spirit world. And to answer one of your other questions about orbs and lights that you're going to ask me about, the orbs and lights are probably what has been studied scientifically as photonic phenomena in this region from the intellect of another individual manifesting itself in your location. So when people have astro traveled, other people who are sensitive have seen things like balls of light, shadows, and things they tested to be or should have been the presence of that person's energy here when manifest here, I come to see here, that leak down from the quantum becomes a physical apparition. And so when we've had balls of light show up with Bigfoot, what I believe that is other members from the group who aren't going to go see what's going on physically and join the other subjects that do mentally. And so you see apparitions based on that presence. And there is actually research on those types of things occurring.
Well, to your point there, I was at the Conjuring House, and we were doing it was the old CIA experiment with the gateway process, right? We paid this guy to come in and put us through it. It's kind of the same thing that they do at the Monroe Institute. But anyways, as I'm traveling, right? Like I see everything. It's kind of weird to describe, but I see my kids, and they're at my sister's house, and they're in the bed with her, right? And so I'm down for like 45 minutes doing this experiment. When I get up, my phone has been blowing up the whole time, and it's my kids. And they're like, I'll call them. I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, why? And they're like, there was a mist over the bed. And I'm like, are y'all at Man-Man's house? Which is their aunt, right? Their aunt Amanda. My son couldn't say Amanda when he was a kid, so he said Man-Man, and the name kind of stuck. But I was like, are y'all at Man-Man's house? And they're like, yeah. And I was just like, dude, you know what I mean? So it's kind of what the same thing as you're saying there, because they had seen this mist come into the room. And meanwhile, I'm in Rhode Island, astral traveling, and I see my kids or my daughters in the bed with my sister.
Yeah, and they caught you.
Yeah, so it was wild, man.
So
and,
to answer one of your other questions about mind speaking, right? And the mist takes us right full circle back to your part of your original question, because when I was in Michigan, and I got a chance to do some research up there, we were delivered into the UP, way deep up the top, which is the thumb of Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, and they asked me just on a map, they showed me a big map that said, where do you want to go? And because we're going to be in there for a week. So I picked a spot south of a major water holding where there was a swamp area to the south where you're going to get certain sun exposure. There's going to be reeds to eat, where the best place, and where there was still virgin forest and what they call, developed, where they plant huge tracts of pine trees and stuff, all mixed in together there. But this big swamp thing down there, those reeds are important food source, even in wintertime. So I'm pretty aware of that. So if you have a family unit, you're going to tuck them in down there somewhere where nobody goes. It's been there for a long time. It was one of the first planted, blah, blah, blah. So we did. We got smack in the middle of it. So they got us so far with trucks, and then we got quads, and then we got, the rest of the way on quads and moving trees and everything else. While I was in there, actually, several people had their first, like Jason Kenzie and some others, had their first face-to-face encounters with them during this little deal. So the area was hot. It was good. It was really good. But I stayed in there alone, usually. I don't know why I do this. And everybody would take off and go back to town or back to the cabin where other people were at a base. And they would go in and out, and they would use the bathroom, or they would call people or do a shower, whatever they do. And so, but I only went out a couple of times during that whole week. And so I was alone when they did that. And it would be 4, 5, 6 hours at a time. I'd just be left there alone, or even longer. And so one time during the day, though, I felt a pretty gnarly presence, and couldn't hear or see anything, but I sure felt a pretty gnarly presence. And as I'm looking to the side, there's the old forest access that, it's a lot of a tree laid down and whatnot. We got the quads in on it, but it still made kind of an opening through the woods there. And there was dappled sunlight just occasionally down through it. Mm-hmm. And this large, dark, you'd say shadow, but it wasn't a shadow unless a shadow, you could 3D it in a mass without a defined edge. Okay. Right. So it wasn't on anything, wasn't a shadow on the trees or on nothing like that, but it was a shadowistic mass, very undefined, cloudy kind of whatever. But it wasn't dark. Whatever it was pure black in its nature, but completely see-through. But it was like that. And it moved right down that road. And I freaking saw it. I mean, I know I saw it. There was no question in my mind what I just looked at, right? So I'm thinking, wow, that's mind-blowing. So I'm not sure what it was. If it was something in a transient form between the physical and not, if it was an astral traveling individual and that was a spirit sense, but just a large, ominous one or whatever, because it felt ominous. And so I just had a weird hair at my ass, and there was nobody there. And I've very seldom ever told this to anybody. Even at the event, I didn't tell anybody. But I got my little tablet out, and I turned on the Ghost Radar app. And Ghost Radar, if you ever research the development of the original app, was built on the electromagnetic signatures of the human mind. And when we say phrases, it makes certain signatures, electromagnetic signatures, to our field. Well, your devices can read these fields. And so it's your bioelectric field, right? So, and they tuned this thing to do, it's amazing development that went behind it. It may seem like a gimmick, but really the development was crazy. So I turned that on, and I just was there, and you would not believe, I have it recorded somewhere, but you would not believe what came across that thing. I got to have a full, cool conversation with God knows what, several of somethings, and it was asking questions about clothing, like what the hell's the deal with clothes? And it was saying it in ways that the conversation flowed, not random words, to an extent that was sketch, man, really sketch. Like it was really hard to justify that this was just random word generator generating words, because we're going from one subject to the next subject, probably about 30 or 40 minute conversation. And it wasn't going slow. It wasn't waiting 10 minutes for a word to pop up. It was just boom, 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 man. It was pretty crazy. And in that, I got to speak out loud with admiration, because it's based on intent. That program doesn't know what a word is like. You could speak that word or phrase in any language, and that program would pull up something similar, because it's based on the intent in the mind about what you're thinking about. And so here we go through this whole thing. And it was weird, because by the end of it, it was almost like I had a full understanding of whoever was out here, and they had a full understanding of us, and all, we're just dudes, and they admire us and think we're cool. Yeah, we got to find out some stuff like, what the hell are you fools wearing? What is the deal with clothes? Clothes was like this huge topic of the conversation. It kept going back to your clothes and shit. So, yeah. So it just needs to say what I believe about their essence and what they are, spiritual or not spiritual, and all this. That's where it stems from. It stems from what I think is a reality that I don't think is paranormal. I think that people are barely in tune with what the potential of a wild person would be, with no second guess. Spend your whole life, if you have a feeling, it always comes out real. You're not going to sneak up on a person like that. You're just not. You're going to sneak up on the guy that gets a feeling and either doesn't register it or that second guesses it. And for mind speak, I've literally, you don't hear words when people communicate ESP. You hear the meaning behind the word. So, and it's a much more efficient, because if I go like this, right, what do you know about what I just showed you? How long would it literally take me to describe what's in my hand to you versus what you just did with your mind, and even likely what's in it? Okay. Right. So that's immediate communication through the symbolism of the cup itself. So that's what you get in your brain, not pictures, but the understanding comes through. And I've been standing there, even around that big one, and while it's smashing stuff that was 3-inch thick, we filmed it afterwards, it's breaking crap 40 feet from me, 3 inches thick. I'm hearing this, I'm a cow, but it's not in words. It's in that full sense of intent of I'm a cow. And I'm telling it, you're not out loud verbally, you are not a cow.
Yeah, right.
I know you're not a cow, because here's your 23-inch footprint. That ain't a cow, buddy. And I'm filming it, looking at it right now. You're not a cow. But so what is mind speak? Mind speak is that delivery of that intent. So if they can do that, and people are weak and people don't cop to it, you could deliver all kinds of things up in there. Even enough to even change what somebody sees. It could cause you to see something either is there and you don't see it, or isn't there and you see it. Because it's just like drugs or anything else. They can do it with electromagnetic waves. A true master at the mind can do that to other people. So what could really be what could really be happening? You know what I mean? Those are now take it from there. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Hell yeah, brother. Well, man, I ain't going to keep you forever. We should do this again sometime, because this has been one of my favorite conversations I've had since I started this podcast. Like,
cool.
Your wealth of knowledge and your thoughts and stuff, so they're just great. But Last question I'll ask you. With our hero, right? With since Meldrum's gone now,
Yeah.
where do you think Bigfoot research is going? And do you think there's going to be somebody new that steps up and kind of carries the mantle? Because we really don't have a PhD involved anymore.
Wait. Which mantle?
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, just carries
you mean who gets the duffel bag now? Or
yeah.
Do you mean,
right.
Or do you mean who can act as that savior?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say act as. Who could be that savior, or whatever, or who could act as it? Right.
Well, do you think it's going to hurt the Sasquatch community that we don't have somebody who's carrying the mantle or carrying the duffel bag, or do you think it's good for it?
That's if we don't.
Yeah.
I've already noticed the trend. We already have someone else that's already, being kind of pushed that direction, whether knowingly or unknowingly. So they push people all the time unknowingly. Richard Hoagland, very good friend of mine, used to be one of the biggest names out there in the weird. He was the advisor to the United Nations on all things space for a long time until he found the structures on Mars, which turns out to be mathematically where we got the tetrahedral math was from the surface of Mars. And the study of those alignments is how we figured out fluid dynamics. You can actually go check on that. 400 and something mathematicians worked on that stuff and then told NASA about a new form of math during what's called the NASA briefings. This is unbelievable stuff, right? But later on, he was taken down a rabbit hole of moon pictures of structures on the moon and giant glass towers and all these other things. Fell off the credibility list, went down that avenue hardcore, was shown real stuff, or what apparently was real stuff. And what happens is if they can't co-opt you, they will go in and feed you, and you don't know, you have no clue that the information they're feeding you is not accurate information and meant to literally knock you off the pedestal. And it will generally be more outlandish even than what you're trying to propose, because it won't have that scientific basis. The same. I actually see that happen to him. I see it happen to Meldrum. I see it Ketchum. And they don't know. They are unaware of this. They don't know this. And then they go out with conviction on what they've been shown, because sometimes it's the best stuff they've got. They've been shown, or they've been given secretly or privately. And I'm going to tell you, the people behind all this weirdness are capable of delivering anything to your table. DNA from anything, a biological specimen of anything that shows any kind of DNA. They just grow it in the lab. Mm-hmm. So there's none of this is real anymore on that end. So who's coming up next? Are they aware? Are they being filled in on their part? Probably not. They're not, unless they need to. They're not going to. And eventually they're going to get a grip, and it's going to be, well, just don't say this or do say this. Go lean this way. Here's a bag of cash. I don't know, but I already have seen it. I've already seen where I believe it's going, and I don't want to drop it because it's the same thing. It's like, okay, you showed us why you believe what you believe. You tried to explain, like the post that I was so villainized for, which didn't even have his name, and all this. And it's kind of like, well, there's others already in position like that now, who people have turned themselves toward, that if I was to go there, it would just be another series of freaking attacks and whatever, Yeah. So.
Well, brother, I think,
names, but go ahead.
I think what happened is you get too close to the fire, man.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I'm saying? And you're out there, you're actually doing real research. You're pulling out real samples. You're educated. You know the process that it requires to actually bring forth discovery. And I hope you keep at it, because this topic needs people like you.
Well, I did pull way back, and a lot of people have noticed that, and a lot of people are fine with it. And I'm going to let you know that there is groups of people, I'm sure you know, but I'll let them know, that that just make our quest to tell them reality almost fruitless. And it's like, sometimes we just have to pull back, because It's not because we gave up. It's not because we were found to be wrong or any of that kind of stuff. It's just simply because I'm not going to bang my head against the damn wall. When I'm being set up that every single time I bang it, it's going to come back harder. That's a setup, and I'm well aware of what a setup is. And so it's interesting to me, which never makes it back to me, mind you, how something I write like that gets filtered and interpreted so negatively by by certain individuals or whoever they are, that then a mass amount of people jump on that. So like people thinking that I was dogging Meldrum after he died, and I didn't whatsoever. That's why I didn't write his name. They just took it for granted that it meant him because their world. I meant about a dozen people that have passed over several years, and several in those last few weeks. That's who I meant, not him. But you guys, or whoever it was, literally filled that box in yourself, decided to villainize me and go after me for it. And this tells me this: you would have gone after me for anything you could have, period. Yep. Now you got an agenda to knock me backwards. That's just fine. It doesn't do that whatsoever. I just step sideways. You trip over your own foot. I don't care. In the end, what we do will still be there. What you do will not be there anymore. What we do will still be there. It'll never be taken away.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, brother, where can people find your research at, man?
You can find, we do a lot of posting and haven't lately, but we've got a ton up there. And even the some of the recent stuff we had, like a lot of audio live feed from one of our cameras out, even passed a hairy finger over the camera live. Everybody watched it. That's on our YouTube channel called KX Kryder Exploration. You can look below my name and see how to spell Kryder there, Kryder Exploration. You can also Google me there and find us all over the place. We have a website at kryderexploration.com, as well on Facebook. You can find us at KX Cryptid Hominid. I think it's Bigfoot NM, but I believe it's KX Cryptid Hominids, the site. And we're also my name, of course. You can Google me up there, or find me on Facebook, pretty well wherever. Most of everything we have is either in that Cryptid Hominid site on Facebook, or it's throughout the many YouTube videos that we've got going on. So.
Right on. Well, brother, I hope to get out there in the woods with you, man. And
so do I.
I would actually love to go out there, and I'm gonna have to have you back on because we didn't even talk about the golden frog. Like that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I'll have to get you back on, man. And
well, you've got an open invite. I mean, you're one of the few people I would just trust. I'll just let you know right now, and I'm picky. I don't even like most people, so. I would trust you with whatever I've got right now. Tomorrow, here you go, man. Here it all is tomorrow. I mean, that's how I feel about you. So, straight up.
Well, brother, I'm gonna take you up on that because New Mexico is a beautiful place. I've been there a couple times, and you know, I know you got the shit going on. I've seen your stuff, you know, and you're just like, seriously, dude, you're like one of the guys, one of the people I hang out with. You know what I mean? No ego, just facts. Take it or leave it, and that's what I respect about you, brother.
Cool. Thank you, man. Yeah, same.
Well, hey, buddy, you have a good night, man, and tell the wife I said hello.
I will do. I will do.
Yeah, brother. You have a good night, buddy.
We'll see you, man. Good night.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Well, that was an awesome-ass conversation. I've been running a fever all day and been super sick. It's one of the joys of owning a daycare. These little kids come in and they're sick and you're holding them and stuff. And the next thing you know, you're sick. But I did manage to go to Walmart and get me a whole lot of vitamins that I'm going to be taking from now on. Because this is ridiculous. Like every time I turn around, I'm catching the damn cold or the funk. But it's kind of kept me out of the loop. But I'm glad we did this, and this was an amazing conversation. Robert's a really good guy, one of the few people I respect in this field, and I'm glad I got to bring this to y'all. So this Friday, I'm dropping my video from my trip with Les Stroud. So y'all got to get the whole behind the scenes, you know, of all that, and excited for y'all to see that. But the big news is the members only expedition. If you're a member of this channel, free expedition. Y'all sign up. It's going to be in Kentucky the first weekend. I think it's the 4th through the 1st of October. Y'all come stay. We've secured an amazing spot, and we're going to try to set the world record for the largest Bigfoot expedition ever. So, but until Friday, I know I'm cutting this short, but I am war slap out. So y'all take care, and I'll see y'all in the chat Friday night. But until then, stay safe and stay squatchy.